What's up, everybody? It's your boy DJ Bruce Willis is back in black, and I promise you that reference will make total sense later on in the show. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Reel Me In, a movie podcast. On this week's episode, Joel and I will take a look at the world of movie news and trailers that have dropped throughout the week and commentate on them for you guys. And we will also have reviews for the new Stephen King adaptation, The Dark Tower, and the new Catherine Bigelow based on real-life event movie, Detroit. So what are we going to think about both of those movies? Well, you're going to have to sit down, relax, and find out. What is going on, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Reel Me In, a movie podcast, where you didn't really ask for it, but hey, we're going to give it to you anyways. This is a podcast where we talk about anything, everything, and, well, anything about movies. I'm one of your co-hosts, Chase Lee, and hey, guys, listen, if you're searching on the internet for something, random on this wonderful Sunday morning, and you are not a movie fan, and you accidentally stumbled across into our house, like you just, kind of walked into the house party, and you're like, I don't know if I'm really vibing it, but you kind of want to see what's going on, and you listen to the entire movie podcast. Well, hopefully we can convince you to be the best movie fans ever. This is episode 194, and what we usually do on this podcast, if you are new, welcome once again. Hopefully I didn't scare you off too much. What we usually do is we take a look at some of the movie news and movie trailers that have dropped throughout the week, and then we, of course, pick a couple movies, maybe just one movie from the weekend releases, and we will review them for you guys. So like I said, it's episode 194. We are 6 episodes away from episode 200. Holy shit, it's coming, guys. Anyways, on this week's episode, we're going to be doing news, trailers like usual, and then have our reviews of the new Stephen King adaptation, The Dark Tower, and of course the new Catherine Bigelow, Mark Bull, true life event movie, because trilogy wrap up Detroit, based on the Detroit riots, so it should be quite good. I'm really excited to do the show. Before we begin, though, please like, subscribe, share this shit around, and let people know that it's a decent listen. You guys are the best, right? So let convince people that we are one of the best online. So, but I am not alone, of course. Just like usual, I'm joined by the good old Joel. So, Joel, what is going on in your hood today?
In my hood, I am pretty well. Have had sort of an eventless week, other than some changes to my internet footprint. But yeah, doing pretty well. This is certainly going to be a very interesting episode, because I feel like there's a lot of fluff to talk about, which sometimes can be fun. And then of course Detroit will be anything but fluff, but that's kind of the exception this week. But certainly going to be an interesting show. Not much going on in my neighborhood, though, in terms of events happening. So
wow, that sounds really boring.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of the same with me. Nothing's really been going on this week. Just doing the work and doing the walking. And speaking of walking to work, I started the audiobook to It, and that thing is 45 fucking hours long, and I only made it through an hour and a half. And I already feel drained, so it's like, Jesus Christ. Anyway, but the book is really, it's nice to listen to, and since Joel and I pretty much live in the same area, we know when it rains and whatnot, so on Wednesday, when it was raining hardcore in the morning, I actually walked to work, and I started the book while it was raining, while I was walking in the dark, and that was some of the scariest shit to listen to, because the first couple chapters is the famous sewer scene. So it's like I was really afraid that if I looked to my left or looked to my right, Pennywise was going to be there telling me to come and float with him, and I'm just like, nah, fam, I'm not about that life. So that was really interesting, and also I would love to plug these 2 shows on Netflix, because I'm having such a great time with both of them. Wet Hot American Summer 10 years later is absolutely fantastic, just like the first day of camp last year. And of course, the movie is a cult comedy classic. I absolutely love their style of humor. It's just so good. It just keep making more of that shit, please. And then also, one of my favorite shows I've ever seen, period. I'm actually going to say that I'm only 6 episodes in out of the 10, is Ozark. If you guys are not watching this shit, it is absolutely wonderful. It reminds me of that status of Breaking Bad, where every single episode, I was so stressed out because there's so much shit going on. You're like, I just want people to make it out alive, but people are going to get fucked over. They're going to get killed, and then your whole weekend's ruined. So, no, but Ozark is absolutely wonderful, so please give it a shot. It's definitely one of the best things that Netflix has put their name on. I will vouch for that. So that is definitely what I've been up to. So yeah, pretty interesting episode this week. And full disclosure, if you guys don't know what Joel and I look like, we are going to be two white males talking about Detroit. So I'm just going to throw that out there. And we are very well aware of what white privilege is. So we're going to do our best to talk about the movie from our perspective, and of course the filmmaking and all that stuff. So I'm just giving you guys a heads up. That's who we are. So
yeah, and there's a conversation going on online about the dichotomy between white and black critical reactions to the movie that I think I'm going to try to get into a little bit in my part of it.
Well, I mean,
because it's become very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, like, do you think it's fair, though, that, like, we tell people, like, who we are? That way, like, you know, that way when people find out, they're just like, well, these fucking guys are white dudes. Like, they don't know what the hell they're talking about. It's like, no, we're going to look at it from, of course, a technical point of view and just overall how it makes us feel as white males in this country and stuff. So, but we will get into that. That's going to be the heart of the podcast for sure. But until then, we got a lot of shit to go over. So this is Joel's week. So Joel, MC that shit. Let's do this.
Yeah. So speaking of TV shows, there's a lot of TV shows that are coming up that are made from movies, and this is interesting because, of course, likely all of these have been in talks for weeks or months or whatever. But it just so happens that the news about them broke all in the same week. And I just found that very interesting. One of them is very topical to this episode, and that is that there's going to be a Dark Tower TV series. And that Glenn Mazzara of The Walking Dead, he's one of the showrunners there. I think he came in season 2, right? I haven't watched the show, so I'm not real sure. Anyway, but yeah, he's going to be the one showrunning this. I gotta say, like, I feel like watching the movie, we'll get into our reviews of the movie in a bit. This is sort of, I guess, a teaser or whatever for my thoughts. But watching the movie, I felt that there was a lot that had been condensed, rather pointlessly condensed. Like, it needed room to breathe. So I'm a fan of the idea of a TV show. I think that this is a really, really interesting premise. And I haven't read the books. My dad, I think, made it. My dad's a huge reader, but he only made it halfway through the first one, and then I think that he got onto some other books and just like lost track, never went back. But he said, they're long, and he's not the biggest Stephen King fan. So I know that that's sort of like my history with it. I just know from what my dad told me about the first half of the book that the first half of that book was kind of dull, but I can totally see like a TV series being the ideal place for this premise. Furthermore, so back in 2014, a movie series started known as the Divergent series, and they went. The first movie was a big hit. The second one was slightly less of a hit. The third one kind of took a big hit, if you will, to make a pun out of that, out of nowhere. And then after Allegiant, which was the movie from last year, which wasn't very good, it became such a liability or a burden on the studio that they decided that they would just no longer go ahead with it. And now we find out, and as if people saw the movies, they realized, hopefully I think, that Allegiant was actually the name of the third book. And as was the custom until recently with young adult adaptations, they split that last book into 2 parts. They did it also with Twilight. Harry Potter was the one that started it, really, and then Twilight, and then Hunger Games. And now, with Divergent, they were going to split Allegiant into Allegiant and Ascendant. And now, Starz channel is going to be doing a TV series based on Ascendant, which is really interesting because basically, I feel like it's probably going to be a one-off season, but basically, like, they, they they're going to be making a TV season out of half a movie. I don't know if anybody actually wants this. I certainly don't. I didn't like the series, so I don't know what the deal is there. I feel like Shailene Woodley's probably not going to be coming back. I think that she even like voiced a thing where she was like a TV show. I never agreed to that or something along those lines. And I can't figure out who wants this. Anyway, lastly, the least necessary thing to me is that YouTube Red is going to be making or going to be whatever distributing a series based on or as a sequel companion to The Karate Kid, and it's going to star the original Karate Kid, Ralph Macchio, and his nemesis in that movie, played by William Zabka. And what? It's a comedy series. It's called Cobra Kai, and it's going to be set 30 years after the events of the first one. Obviously, Mr. Miyagi's not going to factor in because Pat Morita is gone from us now. But who like I understand wanting the Dark Tower because I think that that's a really interesting premise. I think that it could lend itself well to a TV series. But who wants Ascendant and who wants the Karate Kid? I don't understand these things. So that I'm just trying to make sense of this. Chase, can you help me out?
No. Two of these are terrible ideas. One of them is a pretty great idea because a little precursor into a review, The Dark Tower bodes very well for a TV show. And that was one of my major complaints about the movie, but we'll get into that. You know what's really funny about Ascendant going to Starz is that Starz is pretty notorious for going balls to the wall. So the fact that it's on the same network that pumps out Ash vs. Evil Dead, I'm wondering if, like, you kind of take it in a more mature route and make it, kind of violent and corrupt and kind of just dirty and R-rated. I don't know. It could work. I mean, that's one of the major things with, like, the Hunger Games and stuff is when you have a premise like that that's pretty dark and disturbing, I want to kind of see it just kind of go balls to the wall. So, there could be potential there, but I'm just like with you. It's like, I don't give a shit about a TV season's worth of half of a movie. Listen, I didn't see the second one. I saw the first one. It's whatever. The third one, oh, dear God. I saw it with one of my exes, and it was just me, her, and, like, some other person in the theater, and, like, I didn't know what the fuck was happening the whole time. I was like, wow, this thing is a mess. And so I don't give a shit about that one. And the Karate Kid one, that's just a terrible idea all around. I would actually prefer the Divergent half of a movie into a TV season over the Karate Kid. Like, that just sounds like a bad idea from the start. And the fact that YouTube Red's doing it, I don't understand why that service is still available when you have stuff like Netflix and Hulu and HBO and Showtime and Starz and stuff. It's like, are there that many teenage kids paying for this subscription? I highly doubt it, and I don't know why it still exists. It just needs to die.
Especially because YouTube TV is now a thing. That launched just in the last week.
It's just weird. And
I have to wonder if it's possible that they had kind of gone. They had maybe gone to Netflix. Netflix didn't really take them on, which is not a good sign. And then maybe they kind of just threw their chances at the wall with everybody else, and maybe Hulu didn't take it, Amazon Originals didn't take it, and then they had tried YouTube Red, just as YouTube Red, kind of the whole zeitgeist of that was about to leave because of YouTube TV, which, to me, if they're going to do anything with YouTube TV would work, but that tells me that really wasn't in the pipeline at that point in the negotiations where maybe YouTube TV was still proprietary in a certain way. They didn't want to tell anybody that they were making something like that at the point that they were making negotiations to take the show on. Otherwise, why isn't it on YouTube TV? Would it have, maybe it was before the period of time where, we might have YouTube TV originals at some point, but perhaps not for now. And so that's what I wondered. As soon as I saw YouTube Red was taking it on, and then remembered that YouTube TV was just launched, that set me thinking, so at what point in the negotiations for this show did YouTube TV kind of become a known quantity? And was it like after the show was greenlit by YouTube Red? It's interesting. It's interesting, especially considering it's at such an obsolete place that really just very few people use. It's like going to be the MySpace of YouTube, I think. And yeah, I mean, it's just not a useful thing. I mean, it's I don't know. It's very strange, but these series are apparently happening. We'll see if that stays that way. Of course, anything can fall through, but if I were to make a prediction, I feel like Ascendant will fall through the first if any of them do. Maybe it won't. Maybe it's already gonna happen. They've already got a director, Lee Toland Krieger, who did that Age of Adeline a couple years ago, and then the co-creator is Adam Kozad, who co-wrote Jack Ryan Shadow Recruit, which is an interesting pairing. But I feel like that might be the one. If any of these are going to fall through, that might be the first one. But I'm certainly most interested in the Dark Tower because it's a great. Yeah, I mean it's a heavy, dense mythology, as you can see. I mean we're going to get into that later, but I mean it's certainly a dense mythology. But all right, so I will say that I sort of piled a bunch of, because it's an empty week of news at least, I kind of piled a bunch of casting news onto Chase this week. And that was by accident. I just kind of I usually make the notes and then I ascribe the names to those notes, and then I realized, oh my gosh, Chase has all the casting news.
But that's okay though, because you got the Star Wars news, which we all know that you talk for like 30 minutes on one subject on that.
I will talk for 6 months straight. No. All right. So you go with all of the casting news. Just
pile it on. All right, you got it. All right. So casting news. This has been a pretty vibrant week in casting, if you want to say it that way. Aladdin has some potential players coming on. Well, one of which has signed on. One is in negotiations, but we can probably assume that they're going to be on. I'm going to try to pronounce this as white as possible, so bear with me. Marwan Kenzari he's in negotiations to play Jafar, and Nasim Pedrad from good old SNL is going to be playing Jasmine's handmaid, so interesting stuff. And, of course, that's on top of, Will Smith as the genie, and, of course, Naomi Scott as Jasmine, and Mena Massoud, who will play the title character Aladdin. So with these two additions, I like it. I mean, I've never heard of the Gentleman, and of course Nasim Pedrad. I've seen her on SNL. So as far as looks, he doesn't look like Jafar, obviously, from Aladdin, because Jafar from Aladdin looked like he had Elephant Man syndrome. But this gentleman, like he looks like he could portray a villain, I guess. I think the main story about this casting is the fact that they are casting people of Middle Eastern descent, which is always really great to capture the authenticity of the tale that they're trying to portray. So I am all for that. I love that. So never seen this gentleman, and Nasim is very attractive and very funny, which is two qualities that I find very attractive in females, by the way. Good for them. We gotta see some footage first before I say anything about that. So Bumblebee, good old spin-off to Transformers. It's going to be directed by Travis Knight, who brought us Kubo and the Two Strings and pretty much is the owner of Laika Entertainment. What the fuck? That just makes no sense to me. But, I mean, he signed on to it, so there's some hope about a robot that uses no dialogue and only uses it through radio signals, so that would be weird. So John Cena will be joining the cast on that. What a weird pairing with him and good old Oh shit, Joel, what's her name? I'm blanking. Oh, Haley Steinfeld.
Haley Steinfeld, yeah.
Yeah. So she's an Oscar-nominated actress, and John Cena played a buffed-out, tatted dude in Sisters. So obviously they're going for a little diversity in the casting. So that's kind of cool. I really have no problem with that. I actually like John Cena, to be honest with you, and I think and I've said this before, and I'll say it again. When his movie Ferdinand comes out in December, he is voicing the title character. That will be kind of the first time since, those really kind of low-budget Marine and 12-round movies where he's been the title character. And if he knocks it out of the park, he's going to soar just like The Rock. I'm telling you, they're going to be on equal playing fields one day. Just wait. It's going to happen. Hellboy. Good old Hellboy reboot with David Harbour from Stranger Things is going to be playing the title character. That will be fascinating because I haven't seen anything with him in it besides a couple small roles in like Black Mass and whatnot, and of course in Stranger Things. Ian McShane is going to be the one added to the cast. Come on, it's fucking Ian McShane. Like anytime when he's added to anything, I am all for. I watched. What was it? The first 4 episodes of American Gods, and he is really great as Mr. Wednesday, I believe, from what I remember. I need to catch up on it, but guys, there's just so much goddamn TV to watch. Please just alert someone because I might die of overdose. But no, I think he's a great pick. He has kind of that villainous flair to him. He has that kind of demanding voice that always just seems very horrific and stuff when he's in his villain roles. So I'm all for that. And then the last piece of casting news is Chiwetel Ejiofor, good old 12 Years a Slave, main character, if you don't know who that is. He's going to be voicing Scar in The Lion King. I kind of wish... Idris Elba, or if they got Jeremy Irons back to do it, but I think this will be good for him because out of all the movies I've seen so far, he's only been playing the good guy, and he could be playing a bad guy in some other movie that I haven't seen, but it'll be nice to kind of see him kind of break out a little bit of his comfort zone and kind of just really be devious and very bastardly as Scar. So I don't know if he can really kind of bring that with his voice. I'm all for it. So to be honest with you, I have no problems with any of these castings this week. I actually like all of these picks. Yes, even John Cena, because John Cena, he's a fun dude. He's fun to watch, and I'm starting to become a little bit more welcome to him because regardless of what I think of some of the comedy movies he's been in, he's really funny. He's got the Channing Tatum effect where it was like, I really don't want to watch you in anything. And then once you throw him into some comedies, you get to see his acting chops a little bit and his kind of improv. It's like, yeah, this guy's pretty good. And for all those people that are into the WWE, I hate to break your little bubble, but those are actors acting. They're not wrestling. Yes, you have to keep up a physical physique, and I realize that you have to work out and be strong, so there's a lot of work that goes into it, but let's face it, folks, they're acting. So they've been acting for years. It's just I've always felt like The Rock and John Cena were the only two to ever kind of come out of it. In this day and age, kind of like back in the day with either a Hulk Hogan or Roddy Piper, there's certain ones that have that charisma that can break through, and I think John Cena is one of those. So, hell, you add him to a Bumblebee movie, I'm all for that shit. So, Joel, I will spin it to you now, but I want you to open up with these 3 questions, and then you can kind of dive into it. Which one is your favorite piece of casting news? Which one is your least favorite? And would you change anything about anything that's been casted?
Goodness. So, my favorite bit, I think, is actually John Cena. I know, this is weird because I feel like with Aladdin, I'm going to get to Aladdin with my least favorite, and it's going to be like everybody's just going to go, what? But
Joel's a white male. You heard it here, folks. He's a white male. He's racist.
No. So my favorite is John Cena, and it's because of the reasons that you just said. I think that he has a lot of charisma in a very Dwayne Johnson kind of way. And in fact, there's a Facebook acquaintance that always says is a big fan of the WWE and anything involved with them. In fact, he recently did a binge watch of the animated movies that paired classic characters with WWE
Yep.
wrestlers, like the Jetsons and WWE,
Fucking
Scooby-Doo.
Scooby-Doo.
Yeah,
Fucking Scooby-Doo.
yeah. So he watched all of those and greatly enjoyed them. Said they're completely useless, but they're great.
Oh my god.
Anyway, and he was saying he's not at all surprised that there have been a lot of casting directors taking or studios or whatever taking advantage of the WWE as a source for actors because, like you said, it's all performance, and he feels like that's a very specific and very entertaining bit of acting from people who have to keep up a very outgoing persona in a very outlandish persona. And he's like, I'm not surprised that we've seen a lot of actors, Dave Bautista, being in Guardians of the Galaxy, and all these people, being super famous. And so I have a feeling that he's probably, I haven't seen any posts from him about this, but I have a feeling he's probably pretty excited, despite his dislike of Transformers, for John Cena. And it's the same thing for me. I think that it's a very interesting source of talent to draw from. It used to be made fun of. I think that when people, first started noticing even Dwayne Johnson, there were in some cases fairly fond memories of the 90s, wrestlers and bodybuilders and people that came out of the woodwork to act in movies. There was some, affection that people had for it, but it was never really serious until Dwayne Johnson proved to be a good actor, or a good actor in movies, I should say. And so I think that now kind of the other bodybuilders and wrestlers and people who are following in his footsteps realize, oh, well, we just basically have to play it, as well as we do on TV. And so that's my favorite. Now, my least favorite involves the biggest movie star of all time, which is Will Smith as Genie. I know that that's not technically this week, but this doesn't feel like the right casting choice. It's just going to call so much attention to itself, and I just don't see him as a Genie type. And maybe it's, my history with the character as played by Robin Williams, but I always find the Genie to be a character who is, I just think that there's a different, personality to the character of the Genie that I feel like they would be going for in this movie. Maybe they're going for a Will Smith-esque Genie, maybe, and in which case, obviously, he's perfect. But I just feel like there's something off, and I've got to see, like you, I've got to see footage. Everybody else in the movie, we haven't seen very much from them. I'm not real familiar with Nasim Pedrad because I don't watch Saturday Night Live.
Well,
So,
just to let people know, she's not on there anymore. She was on there, I think, like a few seasons ago, and like she's a funny woman for sure. And she's been in kind of smaller roles, kind of sprinkled throughout, kind of indie films over the past like few years or whatnot. But I mean, she has a very likable presence, and I think casting her in a Disney film makes total sense to me.
yeah. And then Naomi Scott, was in Power Rangers, and I feel like she was. It wasn't enough there for me really to judge on, honestly, with performances from anybody, honestly, except for maybe R.J. Kyler. I thought that he was pretty good, but certainly an opportunity for her to continue to make her name, especially now that the Power Rangers sequels seem to be dead. And then the other actors, obviously, we haven't really seen much. We haven't seen much of anything from Minad Masood or what's his name?
Marwan
Marwan Kenzari, yeah.
Yeah.
So we haven't seen much from these people, so we'll have to see how that is, of course. But nevertheless, I'm still excited for Aladdin because it's Aladdin, and I saw it 7 times in theaters when it was an animated movie.
Good
That's
God.
that's that's still the most I've seen. My parents were very kind to me. So
Yeah,
yeah,
your parents probably had to like scrounge like that week for like food. They're just like poor little Joel like saw this movie seven
I
times. Now we have to like wait until our next check to eat.
yeah. I mean, it was crazy because I think that it was over the course of a month,
Good
and
Lord. Did
I
you have
know it
nothing
came
to
out
do as a
around.
3-year-old?
I was a 3-year-old. I was a 3-year-old. It came out right after my third birthday, and I was scared every single time of the big tiger sand thing.
Well, yeah.
So I always hid behind my hands and, obviously peeked through my hands. And then I wanted to see it immediately afterwards. So we would go like, I think that we went 3 days in a row, pretty sure.
Good
Because,
Lord.
obviously it would have opened on a Friday. So we went probably on Saturday and Sunday. Pretty sure we did that. And then we saw it 4 more times over the course of the next few weeks. And
That's
yeah,
so weird because you told me the other day that like movies are for dumb people. You're not a movie fan. Like you've never seen a movie in your life. Now you're coming out with these new stories, Joel. These new layers to your life, and I'm like, maybe Joel is a movie fan. So I don't know. You're just really confusing
I,
sometimes.
I on occasion enjoy these movie flickers.
The movie flickers.
There we go. But yeah, so, and I guess in terms of the one that I would change Will Smith, but I don't know who I'd change it to.
I mean, yeah, that's kind of the hard part about the genie is like
M-
it's so iconic. I honestly
It's
don't know who would be able to.
maybe Jack Black, because I feel like
Yeah,
Jack Black. I know that I'm switching to a white person. I have no intention of trying to like make any statement there. I just think that Jack Black has the kind of energy that the genie had. And it just doesn't feel like Will Smith. Will Smith is more sarcastic and sardonic, I feel. And he's likable, but he's likably sardonic. And I don't feel like the genie's that way. I feel like the genie is more lovable, goofball, kind of, that's what Robin Williams kind of played him as, with a bunch of uh, impressions. And not to slag on Williams because that's one of my favorite performances ever, but that's what he played him as. He played him as a lovable goofball, and I feel like Will Smith doesn't have that energy. He doesn't. He isn't a lovable goofball ever, pretty much in any of his movies. So that's why I'm just kind of hesitant there. That's why it's my least favorite of the week. It's not my least favorite casting ever, but it just doesn't seem to fit on paper to me. We'll see. I will certainly talk about his performance without the baggage of thinking that it might be bad beforehand whenever we see it. But yeah, that's sort of my thought.
well,
Uh,
what about Ian McShane and Hellboy?
oh, I mean, yeah, he's a great presence, and in fact, it feels like he gives credence to uh, pretty much any role he plays, no matter how throwaway. Like nobody's gonna remember this movie. Maybe you will, but I don't know. The Seeker, The Dark is Rising
No,
came out.
I've never even
Okay.
heard of that.
Oh, okay. Well, it's one of those lost YA adaptations. Kind of they meant to make a series and it didn't happen. This one came out back in 2007 and he played one of the villains, I think. No, no, no. I'm sorry. No, he didn't. He played um, one of the allies of the hero, the young hero. And it's a throwaway role. It wasn't a very good movie, but he was pretty solid in it. And so that I feel like is proof that he can do that, kind of thing. Not that this is going to be that, but um, it's good casting, and I feel like he certainly fits. He kind of David Harbour kind of looks like him, so it kind of fits. They probably want to pick somebody who at least fits as um, Ian McShane's son when he's human. So yeah, I certainly like that casting. All right, so the last bit of news, because it's been such an empty week, we're kind of pushing through these. But the last bit of news is that Star Wars Episode 9 is getting another writer. They're not switching writers because Colin Trevorrow and Derek Connolly are still going to be credited as far as I can tell. But because of, I think that this is possibly because of Carrie Fisher's passing. There's got to be at least some rewrites. Perhaps they had already started writing that, and there's just some stuff that's got to be changed up, and maybe Colin and Derek have some other thing to do. But they've added a writer, and the writer is interesting. His name is Jack Thorne, and he's soon going to be most well known for writing the movie Wonder, which is the new movie with Julia Roberts and Jacob Tremblay about the kid with the facial disfigurement. And but actually, most surprisingly, he was the guy who wrote the stage play for Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. So this is interesting because you have one series, even though Cursed Child isn't particularly considered canon within the Harry Potter franchise, even though there's J.K. Rowling has a story credit, it sort of retcons a lot of information that's considered canon, reverses a lot of other stuff, makes up stuff from whole cloth. It's not considered canon, and it's very divisive. But Jack Thorne was the one who wrote that. It caught Rowling's eye, and then she gave her okay. So now he's moving from Harry Potter to Star Wars, which is an interesting shakeup, especially at this point. I feel like they're about to start. They're probably going to be starting to film this pretty soon. I would say probably next year, maybe even later this year. I'm not sure, but this is the one that comes out in 2019. Of course, we don't know the title yet. But I'm a fan of this on the basis of the fact that he's pretty well known on stage. He's worked on stage before, and he's worked on British TV series. He's worked on indie movies. He's obviously now about to do a Julia Roberts thing. So this is pretty interesting. I mean, obviously we don't know how this is going to turn out until we see the movie, but I'm certainly curious to see how this goes. And also, he's going to be working on Sandman, which is the graphic novel adaptation that Warner Brothers is spearheading, or whatever the word is, spearheading. Yeah. So yeah, I'll be interested to see how this one turns out with the new writer involved.
Yeah, well, obviously you guys know I just hate Star Wars, and I just hate everyone associated with it. No, I like Star Wars quite a bit, as a pure, just casual fan. And anytime when they, bring on new people to write and whatnot, there's always like a sense of panic, because it's always like, what's going to happen? Are they going to change up a bunch of stuff? But Joel's right. I mean, with Carrie Fisher's passing, obviously her character was going to be prominent in episode 9. You kind of have to rearrange it, so I get it. You're bringing someone in like him. I haven't seen any of his work, so I don't know how he is, but they've done this before. I mean, with Force Awakens, they had Michael Arndt for the longest time, and then of course he dropped out, and they brought in J.J. Abrams to just kind of punch it up with Lawrence Kasdan. So this, it's not really like big news to me, because I haven't really seen any of his work. Now, if I had seen something of his, I could probably commentate more, but but no, I'm sure once we see The Last Jedi, I'm sure we'll get a better sense of like where her character is going to go and whatnot. So, as long as they take care of it and they don't piss off hardcore fans like Joel, then we're good. We're good, fam. As long as there's no riots in the street, we're good. Luckily,
I'm not a literalist when it comes to like stuff like Star Wars. I am fine with whatever they present me. I mostly had no problems with. Well, I basically had no problem with one of the prequels, which was Revenge of the Sith, and I mostly had no problems with the other two. So I'm one of those people who doesn't get like anxiety stricken by each tiny little thing that might deviate from my expectation.
Yeah.
Trust me, like, I'm a fan of Star Wars, but I am not a Star Wars fanboy. Fanboys are that's a whole other.
You don't want to dive into that right now?
I am not a fanboy of anything. Fanboys are the worst people. And I know that probably we have a lot of fanboys in our audience, and I love all of you, but you're the worst. No, I'm just kidding. They're not. But I think that there's a a mindset of like, just taking some stuff too seriously, and I don't take it too seriously. So I'm generally fine with things. And,
but Joel, you say you don't take it too seriously, but what if they swapped out, I don't know, like John Boyega for Pauly Shore? Are you going to raise hell about that?
It's uncalled for, Chase.
What? What? Well, you said you wouldn't be outraged. I'm just curious if they made that switch. Like, how would you feel?
It would be interesting. I'm actually interested to see how Pauly Shore would movie right now. All right.
Scoobity doobity, hand me that lightsaber, boy. It's like, good God, what are we watching?
What I want to have happen, and this is a whole other topic, I'm not going to broach it other than saying this. What I want to have happen is have some, like, big director with clout make a drama, a very, very serious drama, and just without even commenting on it, cast Pauly Shore in a supporting role, and then see what happens. All right,
it's gonna happen. Like I'm actually on his side. Like on a serious note, that's going to happen in the future.
Yeah, I mean it's got to now. We're putting it into motion. And then maybe in the same one have I keep forgetting his name until I need to say it. Dennis Rodman. Have Dennis Rodman be in the movie as well. Just any 90s like failed star that didn't make it past 1998. Just have like Michael Jordan. Have him be in the movie. All right.
That director would be a legend. By the
baseball player. There we go. All right. Throwing out the 90s references. So that's the end of the news. I think that my favorite is probably just the glut of casting news. I think it's all pretty interesting.
I agree.
Yeah. I mean, I'm certainly like with the Star Wars writer thing, and the only reason it's not is because really I've only read one thing from him. I haven't even seen the play, obviously, because I have to be in London to do that. But I've read the play, and so I kind of know him a little bit. What he works with, but still sort of an unknown quantity for me, or an unknown variable, whatever the phrase is. So that's the end of the news, guys. We're going to switch now to the trailers, and I think that I'll give Chase the first one. Go ahead, Chase.
Oh, Jesus Christ. All right, let's get it out of the way because that's pretty much the big one of the week. Death Wish. Good old Bruce Willis is starring as the title character where he's got a family. He loves his family. He loves his wife and his daughter, and then they get fucking slayed, and he goes on a revenge spree, and he's basically the Punisher. It's directed by Eli Roth, and it's going to be distributed from Lionsgate. Here's the deal. I like Eli Roth's work. I like Bruce Willis's work. And to be quite frank with you, the first half of this trailer was not bad. It kind of had like that, I don't know, that vigilante tone that you would want from this and whatnot. But I gotta tell you, the one thing that ruined it for me was that goddamn AC/DC song. Listen, this is a dark as fuck story, right? And so when you start playing Back in Black, you take me out of the movie. And you take me out of the tone of the movie, and it shifted into like almost like, hey, he's killing all these people. That's got to be a romp. And it's like, no, like this is supposed to be like a dark movie, like the one with the Bronson back in the day. It's like, that had some like serious shit going on. And I'm not saying you have to be like deathly serious all the time, but this is the type of story and type of like plot that you would need to go kind of dark with and be kind of serious with. I don't know if it was, the trailer house, whoever made this, it was their choice. I don't know whose choice it was to put that damn song in there, but it took me out of the trailer because I was actually on board with it for a little bit. I was like, okay, this could be like Bruce Willis's kind of comeback a little bit and not, half sleepwalk across set. So, the song kind of ruined it. And to be quite frank with you, like some of the lines delivered by Willis, it almost seemed like he had no personality. It was just kind of like the one note, like, hey, how's it going? Like, that charming, seductive Willis, and it's like, dude, you're slaying all these people in the streets. Like, this makes no sense. I mean, there was a couple of scenes where it looked like he was trying to do something dramatic with his acting, and God bless him, I guess. But, yeah, the trailer was fine until that fucking song kicked in. So, I don't know what type of tone they're going for, but if that's the tone they're going for, it completely just misfired for me. So, yeah, I didn't really care for the trailer overall. So, Joel, what say you? Because I know this is kind of like the biggest one of the week, and this actually played in front of the Dark Tower this weekend, and I don't know, I could like audibly hear like mumbling groans in the audience. So I don't know, like I think it's kind of making everyone mad. So did it make you mad?
Well, it also apparently played in front of Detroit, which is really weird.
Holy shit, that's actually really bad.
That is really awful, and especially considering he wears a hoodie. It's anyway.
Yeah.
The not great, Bob, as the kids say. All right. Yeah, this was unfortunate, and I actually picked it because it was so unfortunate. I almost axed this for something else, but I wanted to include it because I wanted us to talk about it because it's very unfortunate. I've only seen one movie that Eli Roth directed, which was Hostel, and I wasn't a huge fan of it. I feel like he has a fairly unfortunate view of the world through his movies. He usually makes a lot of horror movies that are really nihilistic, and I feel like, and nihilistic, I have no problem with that, but to a degree, I feel like it's overkill, and this feels like the kind of material that's going to be completely off-putting to me. The most that I've ever liked Eli Roth is when he's banging the bat in that scene in Inglourious Basterds.
I mean, yeah, that was pretty cool, really, but it was not his movie.
That was not his movie, but he was great in that movie, actually. That was a great performance. Everybody was great in that movie, though. But anyway, I don't know. It's like you said, the trailer kills it. It seems to sell a tone that the movie is not selling, in the context of the movie. I feel like the movie's going to be very, very serious, despite that last kind of little intercut thing with the joke. The fact that it's jokey doesn't sell me on the fact that it actually is jokey. Like, I feel like this is not going to be a jokey movie. I feel like this is going to be one of those mean-spirited action movies that tries to make entertainment out of this stuff, and it's just not my bag when it's attempted like this. I did not like this trailer, and I'm growing tired of Bruce Willis. I can't believe I'm saying that because he's given a lot of great performances in the past, but he's not in a good period of his career. And in fact, I also wanted to include this trailer because I wanted to say something about Bruce Willis. So this is a really weird connection. But I am Facebook acquaintances with a guy who knows someone who is making a movie. And they have just signed him on to do a day of shooting in that movie. And they paid him $1 million to do one scene, to do one frantic day of shooting. And apparently, he does not read screenplays. He will just be paid, show up, do the lines, and leave. He doesn't care what the screenplay is. Literally did not ask what the movie was about. He was told what the movie was about, as far as I know, but he didn't ask what the movie was about. He didn't ask to read the screenplay. He just asked the number. And when they provided the number, he said yes. So that's basically where he's at in his career. He's kind of in an Eddie Murphy area, except for he's in a lot more movies, where he's just taking stuff, to be paid. I know that he is involved with some Russian. This is not me being a conspiracy theorist with the news right now, but he's involved with some Russian business opportunity or something that allows for him to take this, and I believe that they act as tax write-offs. So he's just in a very weird part of his career. It feels like he's phoning in a lot of his performances. There was a movie last year that I saw called Marauders that was almost direct to DVD. I think that it opened maybe in 2 cities in theaters, and then it went to DVD within a couple weeks. It was one of those movies, and it was actually pretty good. But the entire part of his appearance in it was him standing in a room for 75% of his screen time, and it felt oddly like he filmed his scenes completely separate from everybody else, and so that's just it's very interesting. It's interesting to see where he is right now. Interesting in a worrisome way. So
Yeah,
this is certainly,
and just real
this is
quick
certainly
before.
one of those things where he just probably saw Death Wish. Oh, okay, I'll be in it. How much are you gonna pay me? And then just kind of worked with worked
Yeah,
it.
and listen, I will say this, and I'll shut up about it. Like, I I will back up Eli Roth because I know a lot of people do not like him. They do not like his style. I actually really enjoy Cabin Fever. I think that's where he peaked, and that was his first one. Like, it's such a campy, kind of like just pulpy like horror tale that I really enjoy. It almost reminded me of like a campfire story almost. So I really enjoyed that movie. And Hostel Part 2 isn't terrible. I actually like the direction they went with it. So he's got some talent, but I think it's like you said, he's kind of put himself in that corner where he's like that nihilist, like gory, like torture porn dude, and so like he can't really break away from that. And Death Wish is just going to add on top of that. And when you have an actor that doesn't give a shit, it's going to make you look bad. And so
Yeah,
I
and
really hope that he can bounce back from it, because I actually believe in Eli Roth more at this point than Bruce fucking Willis. So I'm
yeah,
hoping that
I mean,
he can.
that's
Yeah,
a terrible sign, and this is basically gonna be torture porn. It's just gonna be
yeah,
torture porn on the move kind of thing because you think about the scene in the trailer with the car,
mm-hmm.
you know, that's needless. That's needlessly gratuitous violence,
Yeah,
and that's the kind of thing that Eli Roth works in. I understand that it's not, for the one movie I've seen directed by him, it's not been for me. I usually don't mind it, but I feel like just his worldview as filtered through his movies is worrisome to me. And
yeah.
so I feel like I'm probably not
And
seeing this.
well, he's actually a better producer, by the way. Like,
Yeah, he does
yeah, I mean, he produces a
great
lot of
projects.
stuff. Like, case in point, he produced. I remember when I saw his name for the first time on the poster, I was like, okay, is he getting into producing now? And this is back in 2010 with The Last Exorcism, which is a really great exorcism movie.
Yeah,
So, I mean,
yeah,
he's good at producing.
yeah, big fan of Last Exorcism, and I actually was one of the three people who liked the second one, and I think he produced that as well. So, yeah, I mean, he gets behind good projects, but just apparently not as a director so much, at least to me.
Yeah,
But yeah, I'm probably not seeing this one. Just warning everybody. I just wanted to bring on the trailer because it had some interesting extracurricular stuff. All right, so I guess I'll go ahead and do my three trailers, kind of mirrored situation with the news and trailers. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of blast through these because they're all pretty good, I think. So the first one is Call Me By Your Name, which comes from director Luca Guadagnino, who directed I Am Love back in 2010, and then last year kind of broke into a bigger cast kind of movie with a bigger splash, which had one of my favorite performances of that year with Ralph Fiennes. And now he's going into I mean, I hesitate to call it Moonlight, areas, but kind of a similar situation there about somebody finding their sexuality. And this one is a really good trailer. There's a beautiful song used in it. It's got Armie Hammer and Timothy Chalamet as a man and a younger man who kind of fall for each other. I guess during like a summer together, and this looks really good. This is I feel like this is going to be better than his previous two, which I Am Love has a lot of defenders. I'm not a huge fan beyond Tilda Swinton, who was the main actress. I wasn't a huge fan of that one. I don't know if you saw it, Chase. I've never heard you talk about it, but it was it was a tragedy ultimately, and it was the story of a woman in Italy. And then it's interesting because his two movies so far have ended with scenes by or in a pool, which has become, I feel like it's become a bit of like a directorial choice. He shoots a lot of scenes in water, I find. It's sort of a similar situation with Christopher Nolan, actually. Interesting connection. But anyway, it looks good, and I think that this is going to be one of those that makes a big splash come Oscar time, in terms of, well, not Oscar time, I should say top 10 time. I feel like this is going to be one of those that ends up on a lot of people's top tens. I've already heard great things. It premiered at Cannes to great, response, and I'm really excited to see what Guadagnino has up his sleeve. It's a great trailer.
Yeah, I agree. It was very somber, very sweet, and just like I enjoyed like just kind of the romance that was kind of blossoming like right in front of us, and that was only a 2-minute trailer.
Yeah.
The most disturbing part about the trailer, and it's just sad in the world that we live in. If you go to the Sony Pictures Classic YouTube page, which is the company behind the movie, they disabled the comments, and there's almost 3,000 dislikes on that thing. And I'm like, wow. And I will guarantee you most of the people downvoted this because it features a gay relationship. And that, guys, we're in 2017. Can we please grow up and not be children about this anymore? Like, Joel, I don't know about you, man, but it fucking frustrates me. And I'm okay with talking about, like, some stuff like this, considering that we're about to get into police brutality here in a little bit. So I just don't understand, like, why they disabled the comments. Like, it just, oh my God, it frustrates the fuck out of me that people are still childish about homosexual relationships.
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember. Did they disable the comments on the Ghostbuster trailer when that blew up?
No, they didn't. Like, they left it open for a while. I think they
No,
did it after a week or so, but like still.
Yeah, it must have gotten to some sort of point where they just felt like there's too much hostility, which is surprising because YouTube rarely does that for discomfort. And I just, am drawn to flashbacks of Rotten Tomatoes when critics wouldn't, or when commenters wouldn't get over the fact that some people didn't like some movies and they started, spreading death threats. And I have to wonder if that's possible, that there might have been something. I don't know who it would have been directed toward, but yeah, I mean that is certainly. I didn't know that until you just said it. I didn't realize that happened.
Because like I was watching it this morning because I had it listed in my favorites because I figured that would be one of the trailers you pick, and like I was watching it and I was like, man, that was a great trailer. What are people talking about? Comments are disabled, and I was like, wow.
Yeah, so it must have gotten to a point of hostility that the admin of the page just didn't want them to continue, which is sad. Like you said, we're in 2017. Get over this. It's just, oh my gosh, it's annoying and it's getting tiresome. Honestly, it's getting tiresome. Like there's this point where I feel like we're with this stuff, with this conversation of, if it's not even a conversation anymore, but the quote unquote conversation is to the point where it's like beyond mad. You're just annoyed. Like you're annoyed, and that's the second time you've been annoyed in the cycle. You're annoyed first, then you get irritated, then you get angry, then the anger kind of just becomes numbness, and then you're annoyed. Like that, I feel like that's
Joel,
where,
like
that's where
you know what's really great about being progressive and allowing acceptance and being tolerant of this shit? Did people know when watching this trailer? Do they know that Armie Hammer is actually a straight man who is married to a woman? And the fact that he's willing to take on a role like this just shows you the type of person he is and how accepting he is. And like that's the type of shit that like needs to be adored by everyone. Like this is a straight man going into this role, and I'm sure it's going to require some scenes. And the fact that he's willing to do this, like that, God, I don't understand like why people are just so defensive with this shit. It makes no sense to me.
I mean, it's like we're back in 2005 again with Brokeback Mountain.
Yeah, exactly.
And
stupid.
That where it was called That Gay Cowboy Movie, and as if that's a way to dismiss it outright, even though it's kind of the lightest form of bash. And there's this, and it's literally the same case with that one because Heath Ledger and Jake Gyllenhaal. Heath Ledger was straight, Jake Gyllenhaal is straight, and they're playing men in love, and now we have this, and it's probably going to be a similar. I feel like it's going to be a similar movie.
Yeah.
To Brokeback Mountain. Actually, I think that's a very real possibility. It feels like it takes place possibly somewhere around the same period. In fact, just a different country. And yeah, I mean it's a frustrating conversation to be witness to in 2017. Especially given the country's leadership, and I'm not going to get into that right now. But nevertheless, it's just a lot of people are coming out of the woodwork, and it's really, really just tiresome. It's just exhausting, and but yeah, the trailer is excellent. I can't wait. It's certainly one of my more anticipated of the fall, and I'm excited. I've heard amazing things about Timothée Chalamet, who's the kid in the movie. To be honest,
I'm actually finally glad that. Listen, I've been a fan of him since Social Network, but I'm finally glad that Armie Hammer's kind of taken more of a prominent main character role, and like he's finally going to get like his spotlight, and like that's amazing. He's worked his ass off in like all these movies, playing either side characters or being overshadowed by other actors. The fact that he's like the biggest name in this trailer, that's amazing. And like you said, the kid is amazing from what you heard. So it sounds like if this is delivered properly, we could possibly see a couple nominations.
Yeah, I mean, he worked so hard on the Social Network, which is pretty much like that's when I took notice of him, and I haven't kept my eye off him. I mean, there's been a couple movies I've missed, but I've been paying attention to him closely because he was, it's such a potentially throwaway role that he plays in the Social Network, and he did it so well, 2 roles kind of, and.
I mean, he's in one of your favorite movies of the year so far, so I mean, like, obviously he's doing something right.
And he's like my favorite in the cast too. So
that character was so much fun.
Yeah, he was so much fun, and so many unexpected elements to that character that were very small. But yeah, I mean, he obviously added those too. So I think that he's a great talent, and this should showcase that. I am very much excited. Our next trailer is one called First They Killed My Father. This one is a Netflix original that follows Lung Eung, who was an activist. She also grew up in a very tumultuous place and in Thailand, right? So
I
believe so. Yeah. First They Killed My Father. Sorry, I actually forgot where it takes place. Anyway, let's see. Yeah. So this one is directed by Angelina Jolie and co-written by her, and it's Cambodia. That's where it took place, not Thailand. It takes place with under the regime of the Khmer Rouge, and this one looks very, very. This one looks like a tough watch, in the way that like stuff like Beast of No Nation was, or whatever, and it looks excellent. I think that this will be an interesting directorial effort for Angelina Jolie. She's very much a person who likes bringing to attention this kind of thing. Her past 2 directorial efforts have been in that sort of arena, with Unbroken being a survival movie set in Japan, and sort of like I actually wasn't a huge fan of Unbroken, but it was sort of like Silence, in the way that it was an American prisoner being held in Japan. And then I didn't see it, but In the Land of Blood and Honey was her first one, I think, in 2011, and so she. And By the Sea is sort of a separate thing, but she did direct that. But that's separate. I feel like, for the most part, she likes studying this stuff in movies, these kinds of survival stories that are based in reality. And so this is going to be very interesting. And it's a strong trailer. It comes out on Netflix on September 15th. Netflix usually drops their trailers like just a couple weeks before the movie comes out. So kind of a perfect time to talk about it. And I feel like I'm probably going to review this that week. It feels like this is going to be something I review. So I'm excited.
Yeah, it's a really well done trailer. The cinematography is gorgeous, but like that's always been the case with all of her movies. The acting looks exceptional. Because Joel and I are going to be doing an episode in September that kind of chronicles all the summer Netflix releases, and just to give you guys a little preview, I haven't been impressed with any of them. Like, there's some of them that are like they're good, that's cool, but I haven't been impressed with a lot of them. So I'm actually more on Netflix side in terms of their shows, but their movies are kind of lacking for me, and they always just feel like a very basic, thin TV movie. And so maybe this will be the one to kind of turn it around, because Beast of No Nation was really great. Oatjaw was pretty good, but that's about it. I mean, I haven't really liked anything else, so I don't know. Maybe this will be the first one to kind of turn it around. And I'm not going to lie, a little hesitation on my side to see this because of what kind of broke story-wise with rumors saying how Angelina Jolie casted the kids and the psychological torture that she put on them. It's like, I don't know if it's true or not, but even if it's like, even as a hot rumor, I just a part of me goes, damn, if that's true, man, I don't know if I really want to watch it. It just, because that's going to be in the back of my mind the entire time. So
it's certainly an asterisk. Although I think that she came out and kind of dispelled the rumors. The day after. I'm not sure.
That could be true. And listen, I realize that casting rooms can get pretty crazy. I'm sure depending on what movie it is, but yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I'll probably check it out, but I'm not going to be like jumping on it as soon as it comes out. It might take me a while, and that's because of, one, that story that broke, and two, because you're right, it looks heavy. It looks heavy as hell, and like when I watch Beast of No Nation, good Lord, I need to like watch a comedy afterwards. So those are the types of movies that you have to be in the right mindset for, and it might take me a while, but I will eventually catch it.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so our next trailer, I'm just going to spoil this right now, is actually my favorite trailer. And it's the least, and it's sort of kind of the least profile, the lowest profile of these. But it's called Novitiate. This one takes place within a convent. A young woman has, I guess, as sort of like trying to find out who she is, separated herself from her family and her social life to live in a convent, and we get an inside look, or we're going to get an inside look into that convent. Melissa Leo plays the head nun. I forgot what they're called, and Margaret Qualley will play the young woman in question. There's going to be a lot of good actors in this, and I got to tell you, I was hooked. I was hooked to this trailer. It feels like such an interesting story of faith in a time where we don't get very many interesting stories of faith. We'll get one every once in a while. I thought Risen was pretty good last year. Silence is obviously one of the great films ever made about faith. And those are kind of two of the recent ones that are actually good. And I feel like this is going to join that crowd of serious examinations of faith. And I mean, it's going to be really good, and I can't wait. I can't wait to see this.
Yeah, it was one of those trailers that I was just like you. I was hooked. I love anything that has to do with convents or nuns or priests. One of my favorite docuseries I've ever seen in my life that gave me like literal nightmares. I remember was from The Keepers earlier this year. It's a well done docuseries about the disappearance of a nun and how the priests and everyone kind of covered it up, and dude, religion and scandal is like some of the most fascinating like stories I've ever like read or seen in media. So yeah, I love religious type movies. I'm not religious myself, you guys know this, but I do love watching movies that kind of challenge religion and really kind of showcase it in the good and bad lights, and this looks like it's going to do that. Yeah, Melissa Leo looks great, and I just have to say this as a side note. Watching the trailer, I did get a little teary-eyed, only because, like, her kid's father was John Hurd, and he unfortunately passed away a couple weeks ago, so it was kind of hard to watch that, because I'm like, she must be going through a really hard time right now, so, thoughts go out to her and her family and whatnot. So, yeah, no, she looks great. Everyone else looks fantastic, and who doesn't love a good nun movie? And hopefully this is the better nun movie this year, so I don't have to watch The Little Hours again, Joel. Yeah, because no, thank you. But yeah, this one, I really hope I get like a screener to it or something, or whatever. And if Joel has to come over to my apartment, we're gonna watch it together. We're gonna watch a Nun movie together, Joel. That's what we're gonna be doing. I've already set our plans for whenever that comes out. So yeah, I think I have to agree with you. Just to spoil it, that's probably my favorite trailer of the week too.
Yeah, it's a really eye-catching one for sure. All right, so to get to the weirdest trailer, let's let you introduce it.
Okay, we're gonna be talking about Mother. I mean, we had to do it, Joel. We had to do it that way. That was the only way to deliver it with the fucking exclamation mark. So, yeah. So this one is the new film from Darren Aronofsky. Brought us, Pi, Requiem for a Dream, one of my favorite drug movies, and just about addiction in general. And then, of course, he did Noah and The Fountain and Black Swan. And the guy makes some pretty fascinating works, if you will. And I've enjoyed pretty much everything he's done. I actually like everything. Yeah, that's right. Anyways, he's going to be doing kind of like a... I would say it's like a horror thriller almost in Aronofsky style. So basically like what Black Swan was, where like that was kind of like a horror film about dual personalities and kind of going mentally insane. And so this one, Mother, is going to be starring Jennifer Lawrence and Javier Bardem. We don't really know much, and to be quite frank with you, Joel, we will discuss the full trailer next week. This was kind of like a teaser, because the full one actually drops on the same day as Avengers Infinity War, so fuck yeah. That would be August 8th, I believe. It's next week, so yeah, the full trailer will drop, so we'll get more of a sense of the story, but there was enough in this trailer to kind of dissect before we get to the full trailer. And the cinematography looks kind of haunting and gorgeous, and it just kind of reminded me of like a really like dark fairy tale almost that someone was telling us when we were kids, trying to go to sleep or whatever. So well, if you were those parents, and you guys are pretty cool. So but yeah, the trailer looks great. To be honest with you, I'm glad that Jennifer Lawrence is finally getting back into the hands of like a good director with a good movie. Kind of took a break for a little bit after Passengers and whatnot, and kind of distanced herself away because she was starting to become a little overbearing in the Hollywood culture. So I'm glad she took a little step back a little bit and is kind of coming out with a smaller film to really kind of show people why she is one of the best. And she's not just all attitude and whatnot, so she's got some talent there. And of course, Javier Bardem. Come on, he's Javier fucking Bardem. So yeah, I am looking forward to the full trailer, which we will discuss next week. But as a trailer, it looks haunting, looks gorgeous. It's gonna be weird as fuck, but I'm all down for it.
Yeah, I mean this is the weirdest trailer of the week for sure. I've seen, I think, let's see, 4. The thing is with Requiem for a Dream, I know that I've seen a lot of it, but I can't remember if I've seen all of it. And I'm going to be going through actually Aronofsky's movies before I see this one, because I feel like it's high time for a retrospective on my part. And so that'll let me see Pi and The Wrestler for the first time. I bought The Wrestler not long ago. I just still haven't watched it. And then I love The Fountain. I love Black Swan. I thought Noah was pretty interesting. There's a lot of problems I have with it, and then what I remember of Requiem for a Dream was certainly haunting. And this one, it has a visual style that reminded me of Black Swan, closest from the ones I've seen. And just from the sort of grainy kind of, Aronofsky follows behind Jennifer Lawrence a lot. He followed behind Natalie Portman a lot in Black Swan, became part of the character actually. And yeah, I mean, it's certainly an interesting teaser, or trailer teaser. We certainly get the sense that there's a lot going on in this movie, and I actually knew that the other trailer was coming. I wanted to talk about this because it's just such an interesting teaser trailer. It's not like any we've had, or trailer teaser. I keep doing that, trailer teaser. So Mother looks really good, and that exclamation point is interesting.
You do realize when we review the movie on the podcast, every single time we bring up Mother, we have to say it like that.
Yeah.
Listen, if Darren Aronofsky wanted to put that exclamation point at the end of that, he wanted us to review it that way. So we have to Mother when we talk about it. So that's how we're going to review that movie.
every sentence I will fit the title in, and I will say it like that. I'm just kidding. All right. Well, that's pretty much the end of the trailers. I would say that we already kind of revealed our favorite, which is Novitiate. So I'm good there. It's your favorite as well. We will move on and tell us what your favorite is, and tell us what your favorite piece of news is as well in the comments below our voices. All right, so moving on to the movies that we're talking about. Gotta say, there's really not a lot to talk about with The Dark Tower, so I think that we should just go ahead and get that one out of the way.
That sounds delightful to me.
Yeah, so this one is an adaptation of the Stephen King. I'm not sure how many books, but it's an adaptation. It's from the novels by Stephen King, as credited in the credits. And this one comes from director Nikolai Arcel, who this was a major shift for him because he had only directed, in terms of feature films, he had only directed a period piece called A Royal Affair with Mads Mikkelsen, Vincent Cassel, and I think Vincent Cassel was in it. Anyway, and Alicia Vikander before she kind of blew up. So this was an interesting shift from that to this, and then I think he's doing something that's completely unexpected next. So I just can't remember what it is. But yeah, this one is about a young boy who has been dreaming of an alternate reality known as, or in which there's a couple of figures that kind of figure into it. There's the main villain of the piece, a man in black played by Matthew McConaughey, and a gunslinger played by Idris Elba. And the young boy is sort of thought to be rather mentally unwell because of his descriptions of the dreams, which he keeps having over and over again. And then we find out, of course, that it's actually a real alternate reality, or maybe a future reality. I'm not really quite sure. And that there's this ongoing battle between the gunslinger and the man in black. And so, of course, the movie is ultimately kind of a familiar adventure story about a young kid who's fighting back against an all-powerful deity with the help of a sidekick, a helpful sidekick. And it's really weird that the sidekick in this is the main character of the book. But anyway, this one wasn't very good. It's not a disaster as it's been claimed to be, at least on my end. I haven't read the books. I've read, like I said, my dad read half the first book, so that's all I know about it from his description. But for me, coming at it from a completely cold point of view, it was just kind of bland. It was visually not very appealing. The cinematography in this movie is muddy, very indistinct, and it's just bland. It's just I'm telling you, I'm stretching for things to try to talk about. The visual effects are solid, I guess. Sometimes the story isn't very interesting as told here. The problem, I think, is that it seems to condense a lot of information, and that's the main thing that I'm going to get into here. That the story of this movie is very dense, very epic, and it's been condensed into something that is just kind of very generic and uninteresting, and the performances are just kind of blah. I like the kid, whose name is Tom Taylor. This is the first performance he's given, and I thought that he was quite good. I feel like this could be the start of a good career for him, just maybe a less than satisfactory movie, but a good performance to get him in the door, and I think that he's through the door. And I think that he's pretty solid, but nobody else here really struck me. Idris Elba kind of looks lost a bit, kind of looks a little disinterested to me. This isn't a very engaged performance from him, and I feel like he always gives one, so it was a disappointment. And then the parents are just kind of the parents the parents of the kid are played by Nicholas Pauling is his stepdad. He's just kind of there to be the grouchy stepdad, and then the mom is played by Catherine Winnick from I think she's from, gosh, what show is it? Vikings. I think she's on Vikings. Anyway, not a lot of, we see Jackie Earle Haley, but he doesn't have anything to do. And then, here's the most bizarre performance of the movie. Matthew McConaughey. What is going on here? All right. It feels like... So, Matthew McConaughey has this specific personality. Very specific, laid back. He's obviously played some surfer bros in the past. He has that kind of laid-back charm. So this role as the villain has him try to add psychopathic to that. And it just comes across as one of the most bizarre things I've seen in a movie this year. And, Richard Roper made a good point in his review, which is that he's so ineffectual as a villain, he kind of just came off as a Vegas magician. He's just waving his arms around as visual effects, kind of work around him. And it's just a really silly performance. There's no menace to it, I feel. He doesn't present much of a threat as a villain. It's like he's struggling to find where he fits into this role. And I think it's because he doesn't fit into this role. It's just not a Matthew McConaughey performance or character. I feel like if they had maybe switched the roles, maybe it would be more fitting, but then again, I don't know. I just don't know. I think it's also a script problem, and clearly, this is a committee screenplay. It was co-written by Arcel with Anders Thomas Jensen, and then they brought in Akiva Goldsman and Jeff Pinkner as well as co-writers, and obviously it's a committee by screenplay or screenplay by committee thing where it just doesn't feel like it knows what it wants to be. And so anyway, it's just kind of a bland movie. There's nothing hugely enormously wrong with it. It suffices as a piece of entertainment. I think that the action sequences are competently staged. The special effects are pretty good. I thought that the editing in the movie was at least swift. It's a short movie, and that's rare in this age of blockbuster bloat. And that's kind of a breath of fresh air. So it's better than it could have been because of that, I think. But like we were saying before, I think that this needs a TV series. This really needs a lot of epic scope. Somebody suggested, it was Harry Knowles. Harry Knowles suggested in a very weird tweet, I'm not going to go into that, but a very weird tweet, that perhaps what should be done is Warner Brothers should take this and make it a Harry Potter type thing, where there's all of the movies and all of the books are, each of them are made into a movie where all of them are really long. Obviously that needs money, but, find somewhere. Give it to Netflix. They'll do it. They're $30 billion in debt, and they're not changing anything about that. They're fine. So anyway, it just doesn't feel like this very condensed, very small movie was the right path for The Dark Tower. And so those are pretty much my full thoughts. Obviously, there's not a lot to talk about here. So Chase, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Yeah. So let me just start off by saying that Hollywood, if you're listening out there, I'm just talking about the whole town in general. So if anyone from Hollywood is listening, for God's sake, stop hiring Akiva Goldsman. I don't give a shit if he's won an Oscar. This is still the same guy who wrote Batman and Robin. So stop hiring him to punch up scripts, be a part of the writer's room, because he was also a part of the terrible writer's room in the Transformers Last Night. He also wrote Rings earlier this year. I didn't see A Winter's Tale, but that trailer bugged the shit out of me. So if I didn't even see the movie because the trailer was bad, that he's falling down this serviceable slope where it's if you hire Akiva Goldsman, you're going to have a serviceable movie. I don't want to see fucking average, bland pieces of shit. I want to see something that has impact. I want to see something that has imagination. Considering when you think about The Dark Tower, which I haven't read any of the books, but from the way people describe it, and the fact that it's a multi-book series, it sounds like it's just a vibrant, like, imaginary, creative world that you want to, like, go visit. You want to go to all these different type of universes that the movie portrays, and you want to see all of it. You want to see the creativity that is put into these books onto the big screen, but what we got was this just very serviceable type of action film. And it pissed me off because when the movie ended, I was like, wow, that would have worked really well as a TV show and really kind of expanded it. Like, there were moments in the movie where it felt epic and it was like, oh, it feels like a Westworld almost. Like, it's like, this is the type of stuff you should be making TV series out of, not a fucking hour-and-a-half movie, and let's just cram, like, fucking 3, 5, 4 books, wherever the fuck number they used, into a blender, and, like, there's your movie. It doesn't work. And so that's kind of, like, the positive about the movie, I guess, and the negative is that I saw that they were trying to world build, and I saw that they were trying to add some mythology to the story. But the problem is, when you have this rich and deep mythology within these books and you cram it into an hour and a half, everything felt rushed, everything felt flat, everything just felt like it had no weight to it. Like, you just showed something that was kind of interesting. Oh, it doesn't matter, we gotta move on to the next thing. And the fact that the Man in Black is like a powerful being, and like what happens to him at the end, it's just like, it just felt like a bow tie ending, and I'm like, why? Fuck, you want to create this into a franchise, right? So why didn't you fucking leave it open? It's almost like Sony contradicted themselves, because they want to create a fucking franchise out of it, but everything was so neatly tied into a bow at the end. You're like, why would you want to make it into a franchise? So yeah, the direction was just flat. It was boring. There was nothing visually stimulating about it. It just felt so generic. And I honestly think this is a big part of it. I would say like 25% of the problem, it's rating. It should have not been PG-13. If you're going to go balls to the wall with it, you should have rated it R. If your main character is called the Gunslinger, I want to see some gunslinging action and not some PG-13 bullcrap where it looks like, you had an R-rated script, but you had to dumb it down so you can get more money. Look at it. Warner Bros. Is like, I don't give a fuck. We're going to go balls to the wall, and we're going to make that rated R. So why don't you follow suit, Sony? So, okay, so that's just a part of the problems for sure. So speaking of the mythology being rushed, that also has to do with the characters. I felt like I didn't know anything about the Gunslinger except for a little bit of his past. The Man in Black was just, like you said, what Richard Robert alluded to was, he kind of was like a weird Vegas magician, didn't have anything to do with anything of his characters. Just like, it felt like he just wandered on set in a black trench coat and just called it a day. And on top of all that, both of them, I respect the hell out of both men. And if you want to see Matthew McConaughey do some very villainous, like, treachery, like, watch Killer Joe, and you will realize the guy has got talent for these types of roles. And Idris Elba, I don't even need to discuss the man because he's so goddamn brilliant in everything he does. But you're right. Idris Elba and Matthew McConaughey both look like they're bored as fuck. Like, they have no direction, and they're just like, we hired these two big actors, and they're gonna carry the movie, which is the case for some movies, to where an actor can actually carry the movie all the way to the finish line, and you're like, that wasn't bad because the actor did their part. No, they didn't do their part because they seemed disinterested. And even with the lackluster and flat mythology and characters, even at the very end when we get to the climax, the battle we've been waiting for, it was so uninteresting and so quick. I was like, wow, you built this entire thing up for it to just kind of fall flat on its face, and everything else just didn't even seem like it mattered. It just felt just like, hey, whatever you just saw, do you remember anything? Nope. Okay, here's your little bow tie ending. So, oh god, and we're only on to the story and the directing. All right, so I guess acting. I guess one of the positives, I agree with Joel. The kid tried, and he actually surprised me. Kid actors are very hit and miss for me, but I thought he did a pretty good job. And it is very weird to see the Gunslinger as the supporting character when it's his books. Like, whatever. So the kid does fine, and Matthew McConaughey and Idris Elba look lost. Jackie Earle Haley, why were you in this? Like, I want to know who your agent is so I can call them up and be like, yo, stop pulling the Zac Efron effect and just, like, throwing them in shit because it's really hurting your career. Yeah, that's it for that. Cinematography, like I said, it's just the visual look of it is just, I can tell they were going for that epic feel, but it just seems so disinterested. Like, even the DP looked disinterested. Like, I'll guarantee the DP was like, oh man, the source material, I want to make the movie that the source material is, but Sony's got the handcuffs. It just seemed like Sony just like had too many cooks in the kitchen. They didn't know what they wanted, and so they're like, well, we're going to take a little bit from this book, a little bit from that book, and that book over there, and just throw it in a goddamn blender. It's like, no, did you not learn from your fucking Spider-Man mistakes? I'm sorry, Joel, but Spider-Man 3 is a mess, and it has all that too many cooks in the kitchen type of feel. So did Amazing Spider-Man 2, and it's like they don't learn from their mistakes, and it even carries over into films like this. When you have the same studio that made the Emoji Movie, do you really think they have the sound mind to make good decisions? Apparently not. So The Dark Tower is just another faulty one that is pooped out of the anus of Sony, and it just does not work as an adaptation. It doesn't even work as a standalone film of trying to create these worlds and whatnot. It's just it's frustrating because I understood the story, I understood like the characters' motives and whatnot, and I understood the world building they were trying to do, but it's so haphazardly mixed that it's just I didn't buy any of it. And so when the movie was over, I was like, I don't remember shit from that movie. So yeah, I wouldn't even recommend this as a rental, to be honest with you. And I think the saddest part about the entire movie wasn't even in the movie. It was in the trailers. The fact that they played the new It trailer in front of the movie, and I was like, yep, that's probably going to be the better Stephen King movie I'm looking forward to. And guess what? At the end of The Dark Tower, I was like, wow, I can't wait to see it even more. So those are my thoughts, Joel. Just as I kept talking about it, I get more frustrated because it just seemed like they wanted to pump out a movie as fast as possible, and they're like, yeah, fuck it, whatever. Akiva Goldsman, Batman and Robin dude, here, punch up the script. And it's like, no, like, so I really wish that, because Sony makes good television, believe it or not. Sony Pictures is actually responsible for one of my favorite series that Netflix has done, Bloodline. So I know that, like, if they wanted to do this over again, I'm okay with that. And if they wanted to make it into a rich storytelling piece of work for TV, I'm totally for it. But as a movie, it just does not work. Everything just falls flat to me. And it's really funny that the kid was the best actor of the entire thing, and he was trying to carry it, but the two heavyweights, known as Idris Elba and Matthew McConaughey, did nothing to carry this movie. It's almost like it's like they knew what they were getting themselves into. They signed a contract, and they're like, fuck, I can't get out of this. So they just did the best they could and moved on. I mean, it just seemed like no one cared, ultimately. So, yep.
I will say one other positive thing that I forgot, and this is just a little positive, kind of a nerd positive. Even though I'm not a Stephen King nerd, but I'm just a general nerd. There are little callbacks to his other works here, which I understand is actually an important part of the series. There are, of course, the kid has psychic powers, and what those powers are called is shared by another book that Stephen King has written and became a movie. And there is a picture on a therapist's desk of a hotel from that same book. Let's just say that if anybody can put that together, you're a nerd, first of all, but you're pretty cool. And then I believe that there's like some sort of a poster that's related to or a Pennywise sign or something. There's like a bouquet of balloons, or anyway. Apparently, this does actually directly tie into his other books somehow. I don't know how, obviously. But
like I said, which was cool, and like I said, it's kind of a double-edged sword for this movie, is that their world building, I understood what they were going for, and I did like some of the mythology, but the problem is they do it in such a lazy way that you just ultimately don't care about future installments.
Yeah, they filter all of it through a generic save the world fantasy thing.
Oh
and
yeah,
it's the least interesting.
And speaking of generic, at the very beginning, I'm sure that it pissed Joel off too. This is in the first like couple frames, so this doesn't spoil anything. But they literally spell it out to you as if we're dumb. They're just like, "There's a dark tower that is in the center of the universe, and it's known that a child's mind can destroy it." And that's it. And I was like, okay, like what does that tell me? That doesn't tell me anything. It's just like the most bare bones like. For a generic audience, and it's like I know that, especially people that listen to this show, because you guys are awesome, we're smarter than that. And so when they throw this shit out like that, it's like they treat us like we're babies. It's just so weird.
Yeah, it is. It is very odd. It sort of jumps all over the place, and then it also just kind of settles for the blandly indecisive. And it's frustrating. And I'll just go ahead and give my final grade, which is a C.
I agree. It's very middle of the road. Boom.
Yeah, it's a C. I mean, it doesn't really like earn the lower. It's just kind of middle brow, and so we're done with that. So we both gave it C. All right, moving on to a more interesting conversation. It's about to happen. Let us move on to Detroit. Now, what I'm actually going to do here, because I've been well, not really. I've really been teasing Chase. You know, obviously we don't tell each other what we think, especially with the Dark Tower. Like, I mean, you know, it was a review that I knew that we were going to do, and I always enjoy talking about movies with you, but this is one of those where, as far as I can have feelings about the fact that I'm going to talk with you about movies, I didn't even care about it.
Oh, I didn't either. I was like, I was like, the Dark Tower conversation is not going to be anywhere compared to the Detroit conversation.
Yeah, there's just so little there to talk about, and there's so much here to talk about. So let's get into this. So Detroit comes from director Catherine Bigelow and screenwriter Mark Boal. It's their third in a row collaboration, after Zero Dark 30 and The Hurt Locker. And this one tells or dramatizes the story of the Algiers motel incident, which took place in the midst of the Detroit riots in 1967. And for those of you who don't know what happened in that incident, there were a trio of cops and a few National Guardsmen who holed up in a house with some black gentlemen who were basically made into their kind of puppets in a really perverted game and violent game of kind of who says, and it's basically kind of a real life horror movie. This one is it's a procedural account of that. It follows several characters. There's no real main character. The closest thing is the band, the leader of a doo-wop band named Larry, played by Algie Smith. There's also a security guard named Melvin. Forgot his last name. Des Mucus, played by John Boyega. And then the cops. One of the cops sort of takes precedence over the other cops, and his name is Krause. He's played by Will Poulter in one of the best performances of the year. I'll get into that in a bit in my part of it. But right now, now that I've kind of talked about it, I'm going to have Chase take it away because he does not know how I feel about this movie.
Excellent. So I feel like the way you just set that up is pretty much telling me that we're going to differ a little bit. So let the fight begin. All right, so I absolutely love this film, and I will actually compare it to a recent film that we just saw, Dunkirk, where it doesn't really focus on central characters. It has characters, but it more focuses on the event and the experience of what actually happened. And just as a disclaimer, at the very end of the movie, they even say it. They say, listen, we don't know if this actually happened. We are forming this story around testimonies and people that were there. So they don't know what happened inside the motel. They just have pictures of, police escorting body bags out of the building, and we're getting testimonies from people that were actually there. So I just have to say that. So I don't know if this story is actually like full on real or not of what we saw, but I can tell you that police brutality and racism is a very real thing that even carries over into this day. And so I absolutely loved this movie because, like Joel said, it's like a real life horror film. It really kind of puts you in this hellish situation, and it was stressful from start to finish in a good way, because I think what Catherine Bigelow did was really kind of capture the horrific nature of humanity and what our race, the human race can become in terms of being evil and just intolerant and shit. And I absolutely hate watching a movie about races, because it's some of the most disgusting people in our society, and it's some of the most disgusting things that have happened in our history. But I want people to watch it because it's this, especially with this movie, a movie that was made, what was it, 50 years, or a movie that is set 50 years from this year, and it still resonates to this day. I was the only white person in my audience, and I remember when the movie was done, it was a really powerful type of like empty pit in the feeling in your stomach or whatever. And there was a black woman behind me that basically said like exactly what I was thinking, where it was like 50 years later and it's still the same. And it's true. And it's just I gotta give props to Catherine Bigelow for creating such a kind of like ferocity and intensity with either the cinematography and the acting, and just really kind of make things so intense for you that you just can't believe what you're witnessing, and the fact that people actually acted like this. And once again, I think it's a very viable comparison to Dunkirk in terms of like just how it's presented. Taking more of an experience and story aspect over characters and layers to characters, which I actually think is totally misconstrued, because speaking of the characters, there's enough there to where you feel really bad for what's happening to them. And believe it or not, there's actually like some layers to Will Poulter's character, who is a straight up racist D-bag in this movie. However, he's that cartoonishly over the top racist, but there's also some underlyingness to his character, which I won't get into, but I will say that there's a little bit of depth to his character that you wouldn't even expect, and you're like, maybe, yes, he's a racist, but maybe he's just kind of like a pawn in the system of propaganda to push racism, and like you kind of feel like maybe he doesn't fully believe what he's doing half the time, and he's just doing it because it's the societal order of how people are supposed to treat black individuals. So that's all I'll say, but he does deliver, I agree with Joel, one of the best performances of the year. Definitely in the lead for supporting actor for me. But I just thought from the moment the movie started to the moment the movie finished, I love, like I said, the urgency that Catherine Bigelow brought, the urgency to the cinematography, and how it was that Paul Greengrass documentary feel, where you feel like you're there, you feel like you're watching an actual real life event and not an actual fictional movie. So I really appreciate that. And then of course the way the movie is edited, I think is superb. It is edited, like I said, with such urgency and ferocity and intensity. It matches the subject matter, and it really just kind of, it's just another level of putting you into the situation. So, the editing and the cinematography are probably my two standouts for sure. And I'm okay with the characters not being in depth as what some people are claiming to be, because the acting is so good that you almost get lost in the material in a good way. And also, I really appreciate the fact that like Anthony Mackie was in this movie, and he wasn't like introduced in a big way. It was just kind of like, oh, there's Anthony Mackie. So Catherine Bigelow definitely just treated this movie as like actors and actresses playing real people, and didn't really want to like show both the fact that John Boyega isn't like in Star Wars and shit. It's like, no, he's just there. He's just there acting as this character. And speaking of John Boyega's character, he was kind of like that middle ground where he is a security guard who is a black gentleman in this time, and so he has to like kind of like teeter the line, because he understands like what's happening in the black community, but at the same time, he's also well aware that cops are doing these like psychologically torturous things. So it was interesting to see him in that situation and whatnot, because he pretty much had to witness everything but not really do anything because of his position and his job and whatnot. And at the very end of the movie, like, you feel for him, and it's like, dude, like, you know that he experienced like hell. So I might just go ahead and just spoil my rating, because I have an inkling that Joel purposely set this up to let me go first so he can rebuttal, because it doesn't sound like he's as high on it as I am, and I'm going to shock a lot of people. I'm going to shock Joel. I actually prefer this over The Hurt Locker and Zero Dark 30, and I prefer this over Dunkirk as the kind of like experience movie where like you watch the movie and get enveloped into the experience in the story rather than the characters type of movie for this year. So I actually like this one over Dunkirk. I feel like I've pissed Joel off, which is okay. I'm going to say my rating right now, so I guess Joel can rebuttal. I'm going to give it an A. I think it's just outstanding filmmaking. It's bare bones filmmaking, but it's very effective emotionally. It's haunting. It's powerful. And it just makes you wonder why this shit still goes on in 2017. And as another full disclaimer, as a white male who is very well aware of white privilege, I also work for the cops. And I can tell you that, yes, 90% of them are pretty abrasive. Let's just say that. Now, when they talk to me, they're abrasive in their personality, but I don't know how they are, what they've done in the streets and whatnot. I just kind of can judge them from where I work and whatnot. So I am very well aware that police brutality exists. It is disgusting. I fucking hate it. I hate the fact that I work for the cops sometimes because a lot of people give me dirty looks. I get that. As the cops I've talked to, most of them are cool. But I do realize it is a thing. It's not a new thing. It's been happening for decades. And when you have people that are given power to belittle someone of a different pigment color on their skin, it is one of the most like asinine things I've ever heard of in my life. I've never understood the idea of racism. You're basically judging someone and yelling at someone because of a pigment change in their skin. You must have the smallest dick in the world, because that is one of the most insecure things I've ever heard of in my life. And so every time I see these movies based on racism or discrimination, it just befuddles me, Joel, that like we have people in our society that are like this. But I'm glad that Catherine Bigelow, especially in today's time, and Mark Bull brought this movie to light. And it plays out like a real-life horror movie, like you said. There's even at a point where there's some shots in the movie and some sequences that play out like Michael Myers in Halloween. And you're like, wow. Like, they're portraying white officers as, like, serial killers. And guess what? It was effective because there are some people like that. So, and then, of course, at the end of the movie, it just infuriates you even more because you can probably guess where it's going to go from there. A trial. So A for me. It's absolutely great, haunting, emotional, impactful. Joel, what is your rebuttal? Because I feel like you're itching over there to say something.
Yeah.
Here we go. You know that when Joel takes a 2-second sigh, it's about to go down. So I've given my point of view on this. Joel, now is your turn to rebuttal.
Yeah. So all right. This movie certainly depicts a horrifying paragraph in a chapter of history that is, it's certainly going to be judged in 1,000 years, when I feel like the power dynamic will ultimately shift, shift in favor of the black communities. I think it's going to happen at some point. Where I don't think we're quite close to that yet. I feel like in 1,000 years, people are probably going to look back on slavery and wonder what was up with that period in history? Why were, as you said, people with a different pigment color of skin, an evolutionary mutation that protected people from the sun in a specific part of the earth? Why are you targeting people with that? It's going to be seen as completely baffling, and this movie certainly sheds light on that fact, with a story that is absolutely crucial to tell right now. I have deep personal connections with the police as well. I know you work for them in some capacity. My dad and brother are cops. I recognize that police brutality is a thing, although I think that there's a lot grayer areas in it than most people. But it's absolutely a thing that needs to be addressed systematically and systemically. And this movie does confront that truth. So it's a crucial movie. It's a relevant movie. It's an important movie, and I cannot recommend it. So there's a conversation going on right now in the critical community about the dichotomy between white and black critical reactions to this movie, which I think is interesting. I also think it's ultimately a red herring discussion, but I am going to address it right now, which is to say that there are a lot of black critics who have a problem with how the movie portrays its violence, and I think that I detected it in the movie. I think that the problem with the movie is that it is like a real-life horror film. That's the problem with this movie. That's the reason why I was so put off by so much of the middle section of this movie. It's because it stylizes this incident to a degree that becomes a bit bordering on fetishistic. We see so many instances of violence, as the phrase goes, violence against black bodies in this movie, that it becomes off-putting in a way that is an entirely separate thought from we're seeing a real-life story play out. It's not enough just to tell the story in a movie like this. That's where I felt Dunkirk was set apart, because through its, and this is why I'm a bit confused by your comparison of the movies, beyond the fact that they are telling about situations through an experiential what am I doing? Experiential kind of film where it's putting you into the situation. But with Dunkirk, I felt like it was different because with that one, it was an approach to a situation through three separate stories and three separate points of that story, and then they all converge. So there was enough stylization of that to be not a realistic representation of the story. It was very much a thriller, just that happened to be set in real life. Here, it was so violent that it seemed to cross over into horror movies, but not because it does anything with genre. I think that what it's doing is it's telling the story, it's relying on the horror of the situation, and then it's not providing any real insight. It's not that it needs to tell us why this happened, because I think that telling us why this happened would sort of imply some sort of justification. And I think that with justification, with racism, I should say, that's getting into a dangerous area. I don't think racism has a justification. I don't think really any justification exists. So I'm not asking it to tell me why this happened in any big picture sense. But I think that because of its approach as a Robert Altman-esque ensemble piece set within a very specific point in time, it suffers in terms of its human element. I disagree about the Will Poulter character. I love the performance, and I'll get into my positives in a second. I'm sort of getting my negatives out of the way first because this is one of those kinds of movies. I disagree about the character. I think it's not one note, or it isn't one note in a way that is detrimental to the role. I think it's a one note. I think it's a one note character, but it's a one note character because it needs to be, because there really is only one note to him, and that is that he is a disgusting person. I don't think that, not that you were suggesting this, but I don't think there's anything empathetic with the character that gives us any sort of window into him as a person. I think that he is a vessel for the film's message of racist cops. I think that he stands in for a lot of racist cops. I think that the other ones present have a little bit more nuance, and so that's why they might get a little bit of the shaft in terms of screen time compared to him. And but I mean, speaking of Will Poulter, it's absolutely one of the best performances of the year, because somehow, despite I think a script that sort of undercuts the character a bit, he's able to find the core of the character. Even if I feel like, as an actor, he finds him to be repulsive, I think that he played that very convincingly. And you get this idea that perhaps he believes to a certain extent that what he's doing is right, because we see early on that his definition of policemanship is shooting somebody in the back as they're running away. And that's a very, very, very important insight into his character that the rest of the movie then doesn't really provide. We just see him in kind of the torturer role. And it's a problem. It's not a problem with his performance, because performance and characters are separate. You can have a great performance as a really underdeveloped character, and that's the case here. He's over the top. That's not a problem. I actually didn't see that he was all that over the top. It's certainly broad strokes, but I don't think it's over the top as much. It is one note necessarily, and I think that's also the problem. That signifies an issue with Bowles' screenplay that I find, which is that it's again it's missing this horror element, this human element, where we see the security guard played by John Boyega is a witness to all this, but it never really gives him a chance to, other than through expressions late in the movie and through his, obvious thinking about how to get out of this situation, it never really gives him a chance to have any thoughts about it. Any thoughts, like, in any significant way. It's always in the moment. And yet also it tries to build up to this with a lot of context that I feel is the wrong context. There's so much going on here in this period of time that is a lot more important than, for instance, the stuff with the doo-wop group, which is completely extraneous, and the stuff with the girls played by Hannah Murray and Caitlin Dever, however you say her name, who get to spend or are trying to spend the evening with a black gentleman that ends up being Anthony Mackie, as you said. That stuff feels patchwork to me. It feels like this is the wrong, like the Robert Altman approach of a lot of mundane events leading to something that's big. Feels like the wrong approach. I feel like what we needed was, maybe a series would be better. I would greatly enjoy, I guess enjoy is the wrong word. I would be greatly interested in a series about the whole of the Detroit riots. And this obviously would be a very significant episode of that series. But I just felt like there was something hollow in the progression of the movie. And of course, like I said, I feel like it's more important. There's something more important than to just tell the story, and I felt like they were just telling the story. Uh, just telling a story is a way of undercutting the visual storytelling that a film requires, and that's what's important here. Something like 12 Years a Slave was a fantastic movie because it told its story in an interesting, forthright way. Whereas this felt like it was just a hollow. Here was the buildup. Here was the incident. Here was the the courtroom drama that ensued afterward. And I actually think that the strongest segment of the movie is the courtroom drama. I think that that's the part of the movie that I feel gets this material. Because you have John Krasinski as the lawyer, the film litigates the whole incident in a way that felt more fitting to me than showing it to us in a way that was simply and simplistically brutal. And so that's why I can't recommend it. But despite a bunch of stuff that I'm now going to bring up in the positive section, which is that I do think that this is solid filmmaking. I think that the cinematography from Barry Ackroyd is terrific. He works with Bigelow a lot, and worked with Bigelow not on Zero Dark 30, that was Greg Fraser, but with Bigelow on The Hurt Locker, which was some of my favorite cinematography that year. And this is certainly in that vein. It's very, as you said, it's very documentary. It's very gritty, veritas or verite or whatever. I think that the film is expertly edited. I think that the sound work is superb. I think that the performances are all convincing, especially Poulter. I think he's the best in film. And I think that Boyega was pretty good. But I've said it before, I'm a storytelling guy. I pay attention to what a movie is doing when it tells its story visually, because that's the most important thing here. More important than anything else the movie could be saying or doing, it's how it says it. To bring back the old adage from Ebert, a movie is not about what it's about how it's about it. And how this movie is about this story was, I felt, in a progressively hollow fashion. There was context only in the telling of the story. There was not enough context into the era, which I think it could have used more of, and it was underwhelming on that basis. It's a near miss. I will say that. Once I get to my grade, you'll find that out. But it's a very near miss because I think that it's an important movie. It's not a movie I would tell people not to see. And that's the thing about sometimes not being able to recommend these movies is like I don't have any problem with people seeing it, and I think that people should see it for the story, but there's an element of something that's more important in terms of filmmaking here, and that's how it tells the story, how the screenplay approaches the event, the incident. And I think that here it was in a very simplistic manner. And I gotta say though, like to tease a bit of to tease something that's going to be late in the year, we're gonna have a guest on, and very likely it's going to be high on both of your lists. At the end of the year, I can already tell that. And I'm going to be the odd one out. So it's going to be interesting to bring this back up at the end of the year. It's going to be one I rewatch because I feel like I'm going to rewatch a lot of the movies that you and the guest, I'm not going to give it away yet who it is, but you and the guest consider for the lists. I think I'm going to rewatch some of them, especially the ones maybe that I didn't quite find were top 10 worthy or whatever. So it'll be interesting to see it again at the end of the year. Maybe something will shift, and if it does, I'll be honest about that. But right now, I came out underwhelmed and disappointed by the fact that it was a hollow representation of an important part of American history. It's a terrible story, terrible, terrifying, horrifying. It's impossible to believe that this is part of our collective history. But again, reliance on simply the horror of it is undercutting the story, and that's what I felt this movie did. So you gave your grade away. I'll give my grade away. It's a very reluctant C plus. So that's what the deal is. It's so hard to say that about something like this because I totally want to be in the tank for a movie like this. But I got to be honest. I mean, it's like Ebert said, Siskel said, got to be honest. And for me, it just didn't click, at least on this viewing.
And I totally get that. And I got to rebuttal a couple things that you said. Yeah, I don't feel empathy for Will Poulter's character. What I was alluding to was I felt sorry for him. And I can definitely tell, like, within his character, like you said, he felt like he was right on everything. And so I felt sorry for him because he's just a pawn in the propaganda. And that's where I felt a little bit more layered to him in terms of, like, oh, shit, like, this guy is, like, he's brainwashed. And, like, I just felt sorry for him. So that's what I was alluding to.
I wasn't saying that you were feeling empathy for him. I'm just saying that there's no empathetic goodness. What is the word? There's no I get what you're saying. It's sort of a pitying him.
Yeah.
And I felt like the screenplay didn't quite get there. There were some, maybe in his performance there was an element of that. Maybe he felt pity for the character he was playing. I can't imagine it was an easy role to play for anybody. Really, any of those cops, got to say. And the other ones are played by Ben O'Toole and Jack Raynor, looking exactly like Seth Rogen in a way that is remarkably scary. And or at least Observe and Report era Seth Rogen. Anyway, but yeah, I mean, with the Poulter character, I felt like it didn't quite get there with him, and so that's.
That's fine. I understand because he comes off as like just a dickbag from start to finish, so it's kind of hard to find any nuances in any of these cops. But they did kind of portray different officers in different sections of the city in terms of how they portray racism. Like Joel said, like it focuses on 3 Detroit cops, National Guards people, and also Michigan State Police. And the way they are portrayed in the movie pretty much just shows you the different levels people are in terms of how racist they are, or in terms of just looking out for their future, because there's a section in the movie where like the Michigan State Police come up and go, what's going on there? And then the National Guard's like, this is what's happening. And they're like, I don't want to have anything to do with this. Do you blame them? Shit, especially like after what was happening, like no. And so they fucking sped off. So, not everyone's portrayed as just a straight up asshole. It's like there's many different areas in terms of how the racists are portrayed in this movie, and so that's all I was talking about with him. But going with the violence thing, I don't personally understand where you're coming from, because I think what's most effective about this versus like a Dunkirk, speaking of that, is the violence. When you portray any part in history that was a heinous, violent act, I want to see it. If it is neutered or watered down, I don't feel as affected by it as when I see it. Dunkirk is a war film, and I like it. Joel and I gave it the same grade. But if you want to be honest about it, the PG-13 violence does kind of hinder it a little bit, because there are a couple of scenes in the movie where it gets pretty violent, and you're like, I expect to see limbs flying off, I expect to see blood and gore. When you have that, it just adds that extra level of of what you want in your movie if you want to portray this, because that's not what history was. This PG-13 kind of glossy.
I disagree with this, and I'll let you finish, but I disagree with this. I'll let you go.
Yeah, I like the fact that they went hard R with it, because police brutality and racial discrimination and torture is still a real thing, and it is still just as bloody and just as violent. If they were going to portray that, I don't want to see a clean version of it. I want Catherine Bigelow to get her point across, even if it's some terrifying shit to see. That is how it affects you to your core, and not really, I didn't feel like it was gratuitous at all. I was just like, this is probably how it went down. Like, I just accepted the fact that we live in this day and age, especially now, where cops can be that violent. And I didn't find it gratuitous or overbearing at all. I felt like it's appropriate for that time. It's probably what happened in the motel. Like I said, they do have at the very end as the disclaimer that we don't know all the events that happened, but from testimonies we can probably assume that this is how it went down. So we want to portray it to you in that kind of fashion.
And see, that's where I have the problem. So I don't want to.
So what you're saying is the violence isn't justified because they didn't know the full true story of what happened in the motel, so they're pretty much amping it up to that degree to make you feel something, even though they don't know what actually happened.
Right. I feel like there's an element here of the violence not being. I don't think the violence is realistic. First of all, I think that there's a very thin line between what is realistic violence and what is stylized, and I think that this dips over into stylized a bit. Not in like a Tarantino way. I don't mean that. Again, this is the thin line. Tarantino obviously greatly stylizes his violence, but and stuff like Django Unchained. But in this case, it was to a point of violence that, taking into account that disclaimer at the end, felt like part of the violence was made out of whole cloth. I know that stuff like this is violent. I understand that, and I don't want a dumbed down version of it. But again, that's why I didn't use the word gratuitous. I used the word fetishistic, is because with and not like it's a fetish. That's a wrong. Anybody who reads the word fetishistic as, oh my gosh, it's a fetish. That's not how I'm using it. I'm saying that it is too. It kind of blurs the line between being confrontational with the violence and treating it as kind of the heightened nature of it inherently is kind of a glorification on a really weird level of that violence. I don't think they're glorifying violence against black people. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm just saying that the level of violence here is so brutal that it stopped feeling realistic for me pretty early on. And then the disclaimer came, and that's when it settled as I feel like a lot of that was just whole cloth. It was not an accurate representation of the violence. It was a representation of the violence. And anyway, it's frustrating because with to bring up Dunkirk, here's the thing. So with violence, it is a matter of. I feel like gore doesn't add to intensity. The gore of violence is about the specifics of the effects of violence on bodies, and I think that adds to authenticity. But that's not what Nolan was going for. So, and that was very clearly not. I think that he was going for a suspense thriller that happens to take place in a war, and that the bloodlessness of it was part of his kind of trying to make this about more than just the war story. It's about an experience of war that was very fast, very confusing sometimes, and we didn't need the gore to increase the tension, because Really, gore doesn't do that. It increases authenticity of violence, but the violence itself, uh, the tension comes from how it's presented, how it's filmed, how it's edited, what have you, how it's staged, how it's lighted. And in this one, it felt a bit exploitative to me. And I just maybe exploitative is a better word than fetishistic. That's what I think it is. I think that it kind of touches that line uh, between exploitative and genuinely confrontational of the violence, and it doesn't quite know. I just don't quite know what it wants to be there.
Well,
Uh,
and see that's where maybe that was just my experience because I got so sucked into the movie that the violence, yes, it was horrific to see, but it didn't really bother me in a way where I was like, oh, that takes me out of it. It's just like, yeah, this shit probably happened like this, and it probably went down like this. And I'm not, I don't know. Like I said, maybe I was just so into it at that point that when the violence happened, I was kind of like I felt cold, and I felt like just I had this empty pit in my stomach just because I was so
yeah.
invested into what was actually going on that it didn't really bother me too much. Because you're right, violence can take anyone out of a movie, and I totally get that. But when we're dealing with a subject matter like this, I mean, yeah, if Catherine Bigelow was like, having these like cops like use bazookas to like blow up people and stuff, like, yeah, that to me is like, we're crossing the line a little bit because I don't think that happened, and that's a little that would take me out of the overall experience. But the violence to me was, they were gunshots, they were punches, like it just, it didn't seem like too out of place for me, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I get it. And this is going to be one of those movies where there are a lot of opinions, and there already are. And like I mean, I told somebody who was, oh well, I don't think this person had seen the movie yet, but was looking forward to it and asked me what I thought. And I told him, I said I sat there, I wanted to embrace it, but that cold feeling you had, that happened throughout the whole thing, and I just didn't want that to be the case, because I think feeling cold about a movie, for any reason really, it just didn't engage me in the tragedy of the situation.
But you can feel cold to a movie when it's based on these type of like horrific events. Like when you watch like a horror film, like that's like it's a fictional horror film, you can feel like kind of like that cold sweat running down your face. That's not a bad thing. That's actually that's effective in this in the type of atmosphere that you want to portray. And so my coldness was just more of like,
drained. I think I felt drained in a way that these movies usually don't make me feel.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna lie. For 2.5 hours, it's an intense fucking movie. It never lets up.
That's what I mean. Is I felt drained in an exhausted, exasperated sort of way. Not in a because I feel like when people say that they're drained by movies like this, it's in a way that is also vital to the movie, in the way that you come out of it knowing that you saw a great piece of filmmaking and a great piece of storytelling, and it was horrifying, and you're just drained, and it was incredibly satisfying in that way that you just saw a great movie. Not not that kind of satisfying, but satisfying in the way that you just saw a great movie. This one, I felt drained in an exhausted and exasperated way that it made me feel empty, and I felt like
yeah,
I was.
It's literally like a punch in the gut. Like I experienced.
It was in a way that my hand closed on air at the end, and I didn't latch onto it in the way that I think it wanted me to. I didn't latch on to the sense of tragedy that it tried to build up. That's my problem. And so, again, I'm gonna see it again. I'm gonna see it again because this is obviously a movie not to be just seen once and semi sort of kind of dismissed like I'm doing it. I feel like this is one of those that needs to be experienced one more time. But of course, I only had time for one viewing. So, nevertheless, that's my take on it. We certainly differ, and I'm going to differ from a lot of people because this is in the mid '90s on RT, and so I am probably somewhere up there on Metacritic, I'm sure. And again, like when we record that episode late in the year, I'm going to be the odd guy out, and I'll have to explain myself again if I see it again and feel the same way. We'll see where that takes me.
Yeah,
But
I mean, for sure. I just want to say a couple more things. I maybe it was just me. I mean, I experienced a gamut of emotions. I felt fearful. I was angered. I was cold. I was petrified. I was shocked. Like it just hit the sweet spot for me where I felt like this full range of emotion and emotional intensity that I hadn't felt in a movie in a long time. And it might have just been the environment I was in. I have no clue, but it struck me in the right way. And I only have one. It's not a negative, but it's like a nitpick. And then I'll shut up about this movie. I did like the trial scenes were really great at the end, but I kind of wish they would have split the movie up and did 50-50, where it was like 50% the motel, 50% of the trial, and it would have been a more riveted piece of filmmaking. I probably would have bumped up to an A+. But that would be my only nitpick. I liked the way it was presented for me. I just felt like the trial scenes were a bit rushed, and they could have expanded that. And if they split it 50-50 like that, I think it would have probably benefited better, especially for people like Joel, where like if the violence got a little bit more, too exploitative and too draining on your experience, maybe if you kind of lessen that a little bit and, like I said, did the motel for maybe, half or maybe the full second act, and then do like the trial scene for the full third act and really commit like more time to it, it probably would have altered Joel's viewing, and it probably would have altered my grade a little bit. So that would be my only nitpick.
I think it's that long draining, only the incident in the middle, and I just got lost in it in terms of my emotional attachment to the situation ultimately as a piece of storytelling. And I have to do that disclaimer because I'm not talking about it as a story itself, but as a screenwriter's writing of the situation. It left me cold, but yeah. I'm certainly glad that people are responding so strongly to it in any direction, because it's definitely an important movie. Even with my C+, I'd still say see it because this is an important story to tell. Whatever I feel about the quality of the movie itself, and it's a must see that I can't recommend, which is the line I've been using on it for several days. Not the Chase because I've been kind of ducking around him, but yeah, and actually people are responding strongly, as I'll get to in the box office. So, all right, this is Chase's week to guess the box office.
Oh, you son of a bitch, Joel. All right, I can tell you right now that The Dark Tower probably flopped on its own dick, which is perfectly fine. So what I'm gonna do real fast, because we do this, is I'm just gonna give you some hints.
Okay. I'm going to just say that there were two major releases this week: The Dark Tower and Kidnap. And then there was, which I didn't see Kidnap. I know that Chase did. I probably will rent it like way down the line. I don't know if I'm bored or something. And then of course Detroit widened. Last week it opened in 20 theaters, and this week it grew by almost 3,000 theaters. So, anyway, all right, those are your clues. And go ahead and.
I said this last week, and I'll say it again. Detroit is gonna surpass expectations, I believe. It always was going to. Because like you said, whether you are going to dislike it or like it, it's going to have a strong response no matter what, so it's going to create a lot of buzz. So I'm actually going to say for number... Oh, fuck. Because the weird thing is, the movies that came out last weekend, because I'm gonna try to talk this out, Joel, and see if I can try to form it. Last week's movies didn't do that hot. They came in at number 2 and number 5. So I have a feeling that those dipped significantly, and I don't even think the number 5 slot from Atomic Blonde's even in the top 5. I believe the Emoji Movie probably crashed a lot harder in its second weekend. So I'm going to say Emoji Movie's number 5, The Dark Tower's number 3. No, wait, I changed that. Spider-Man is number 5, Emoji Movie is number 4, Dark Tower is number 3, Dunkirk is 2, and number 1 is Detroit. I'm gonna take a wild guess and say
I'm gonna give you another chance, and I'm just gonna give you another clue. I actually brought up Detroit just to bring up the numbers at the end of the thing, but it's not in the top 5.
Which is weird because it opened up nationwide this week.
Right.
Wow.
I mean, it rose an incredible amount, and that's why I brought it up, because this is one of the biggest rises I've ever seen in a movie. But it is not in the top 5.
Well, I figured it would have struck in there. Okay, I guess I'll go number 1, Dunkirk, 2, Dark Tower, unfortunately, but I don't think it made that much. Number 3, Emoji Movie. Number 2, number 2 I'll go Spider-Man. Number 5, I don't know, maybe Atomic Blonde crept in there, so that'll be my 5.
All right. Nope. Okay, so you got the Emoji Movie right. That did open at it played at number 3. It's got $49.5 million and a $50 million budget, which means it's about to make its money back, kind of. But worldwide, it's at 62. So this thing is not doing well.
Good.
Because it's, obviously $50 million, then another 50 for the theaters, then another 50 probably for the advertising, maybe even more than that. Yeah, not doing well. So that's number 3, and I'll just go backward from the other ones. Number 5 is Kidnap.
Oh yeah, see, I forgot about it because it was terrible. but you know what? I shouldn't have counted that out because The Call made a lot of money when it premiered, and that was also an awful movie from what I've heard. And of course, that I think it actually came out to like number 2 or number 3 that weekend. It was pretty high, so I'm an idiot. I completely forgot about Kidnap, but I mean, do you blame me though?
Right. And like I said, I didn't see it. Its budget isn't listed on this. Okay, it's got a $20 million budget.
Oh, that's a little too much.
Yeah. I suspected that. Although that might be wrong. I don't know. It might have been like $5 million. I'm not sure. But it made $10.2 million this week. And so that's number 5. Number 4 is Girls Trip with $11.4 million. That brings it up to $85.4 million at a $19 million budget. So it's doing well. The Emoji Movie is number 3. Like I said, it's got $12.4 million and then this weekend. And then number 2 is Dunkirk with $17.6 million for a total of $133 million domestic and $314.2 million worldwide at a $100 million budget. That's pretty good. It's doing its thing, and that's actually what I think I made that point a while ago, where I said that it would probably do it over a little bit of time, make that money back and justify itself. That's what it's doing right now. So that's a good thing. And then number 1 is The Dark Tower, but you are right in that it did not make very much, and that is $19.5 million.
Oh, that's bad.
Yeah, it was barely number 1, kind of.
Wow.
In the grand scheme of things, even though it clearly won, it only won by $2.1 million.
That's shitty.
$1.9 million. So it's got a $60 million budget.
Wow.
Worldwide, it's at 27.5. So that thing is tanking. People are getting the message. Yay! So yeah, that's this week's, and then Detroit is at number 8 with 7.6 or 7.3 million.
Ooh, that's really good.
Yeah, for a total of 7.8 million, because obviously it only opened in 20 theaters last week, so it didn't make a lot, but it rose 1,970.6% with its growing by it grew to 3,007 theaters, so $34 million budget. Obviously, this is like Annapurna is not really worried about this making its money back. This is not one of those movies where I feel like the studio is really sweating over it, because they're going to make this kind of movie whatever.
Well, and I also have a really strong feeling that rental sales will go up when it gets a slew of nominations. So,
yeah, yeah. And then the ones I think you had predicted or guessed Spider-Man and Atomic Blonde were in there. They're 6 and 7, respectively. So they're still pretty high. Spider-Man's at 8.8 million. That was number 6, with 294.9 million. Man, that's a little bit of money, a tiny bit.
a little bit.
And then Atomic Blonde was at number 7. It's up to 34.1 million on a $30 million budget. So that's not going to be one of those that does great, but whatever. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I think that the only another big rise was, and I like to point these out if they're over 500% rise, and if they're like under or over a negative like 80%, because that's huge. The other big rise was an Inconvenient sequel, Truth to Power, which rose. It added 176 theaters this week, and so it rose 621%, and it's at 900,000, making it $1 million overall. So that's pretty good. The first one was a big success financially, and that's certainly what it seems to be with this one. So a lot of good news all around. I haven't seen an Inconvenient sequel yet. I don't think you have either, right? So
no, I don't even think I've seen the first one.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I haven't either. So I'm certainly going to watch both of those, and at some point, probably not in the theater, but yeah. So a lot of interesting news all around. But that's the box office for the weekend, and of course next weekend will be an interesting one. I guess I'll go ahead and we might as well go through August, right?
Yeah, let's give our listeners a little preview taste of what we're doing for the rest of the month.
Yeah, so next week we're going to be doing a joint review of The Glass Castle, which is the new film from the director of Short Term 12, and I'm actually going to be watching Short Term 12 at some point this week because I hadn't seen it. It's on Netflix, though, I think. Pretty sure it's still on Netflix. Anyway, we're going to be both reviewing that, and then we're going to be doing each a solo review. Mr. Lee over there is going to be reviewing Annabelle Creation, and I, Mr. Copling, am going to be reviewing, yes, The Nut Job 2, Nutty by Nature, because I love all of you, and I want to subject y'all to my thoughts on that. The following week, is The Hitman's Bodyguard, which is the new Ryan Gosling. Wow, Ryan Gosling. Okay, Ryan Reynolds and Samuel L. Jackson buddy comedy action thing with Gary Oldman as a villain. That's going to be awesome. And then Logan Lucky. Can't wait for that. It's going to be the new Steven Soderbergh crime comedy. And then the week after that, we've got a guest on, Mr. Kerry Darling, who's going to be joining us for a fall preview. So that's going to be a lot of fun. And then, of course, that episode that Chase hinted at is technically the first episode of September, but it's going to be we're talking about the Netflix offerings of the summer. And I think that we're going to try to make that a regular-ish thing, where at the end maybe of every season we come back and talk about that. I don't know how that's going to work in the fall, but we'll try to do that. And so that's the next few weeks.
Yeah, so we have a pretty awesome lineup. I can't wait to do the fall movie preview. That one's always fun. So yeah, that will do it for this week's episode, guys. Episode 194. But please let us know down below what you thought of the movies that we saw. Are you on Joel's side? Are you on my side? Please let us know, and of course, commentate on everything that we've talked about, son. And then, of course, spread this show around and let people know that this is your movie podcast. It is you guys. You guys are the ones that dictate the show, and you give us love and support. So thank you for that. Joel actually has a little piece of news for his Twitter handle. He actually did his old Twitter account dirty and did it Old Yeller style and shot it in the backyard. So Joel, what is your new Twitter handle?
I took it out there very carefully, aimed the rifle. No, okay. So I changed my Twitter handle. I wanted to make it a little more podcast themed. It's weird because the former Twitter handle was Copling_Joel, which was very old. Back when I first made my website, this is going to sound insane, and it actually didn't really work out, thus it's not like that anymore. But whenever I first kind of was trying to get into my website biz, I sort of kind of hired on a couple of other writers, and we tried to do something where we would review each movies, and then just kind of post our reviews on my website. And it was still under my name, weirdly enough. It was still Joel on Film, but anyway, it ultimately didn't work out. But Copling_Joel was going to be my handle, and then the other two had their last name, then underscore, then their first name. So that's been my Twitter handle for 6 years or 5 years or whatever. And then I decided, you know what? I'm part of a new website. I kind of want to change things up a bit, and I decided to do @RealJoelCopling. So it's going to be matching Chase's, because I mooch off of him for everything. No,
which I don't understand, because you're the better critic than I am. So that backwards thinking, Joel's got to stop.
So anyway, I decided to do that, and I'm taking a bit of a different approach also to the movies that I review on my website. I'm hoping to get up to 4 per week, and in a certain via certain methods. So I'm expanding, diversifying, as Michael Scott of The Office would say, diversifying. This is fun, and so I'm changing things up on the internet just a little bit. It's not a bunch of significant changes, but that is a significant one. In case you want to follow me and you've only just first heard of this show, you can follow me at Real Joel Copling. That's REEL, and
Yeah, if you guys want to follow me on Twitter, it's the same as Joel's. Just swap out my name, of course. So it's Real Chase Lee. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. And, of course, follow, like, subscribe, comment, rate, whatever you guys have to do on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, this side and whatnot. So this podcast is pretty much everywhere. So Joel and I, we have made our footprint on the Internet Society. So enjoy it while it lasts. So next week, episode 195, like Joel said, will be a triple header. That will be a fascinating one for sure. So that will be next week. But this week, though, 194. Hope you guys enjoyed it. You guys are always badass. And in the intro and outro music is done by my friends band Fervent Roze. And guess what? All the links in the descriptions below. Everything that Joel and I talked about, it's all down there for you to click and have fun with. So we will see you guys next week for another episode of Reel Me In, a movie podcast. And hey, listen, if you made it through this entire length of the podcast, which was equivalent to any Michael Bay Transformers film, and you found it interesting, and you were not a movie fan, well, hopefully we convinced you to be one. So next week, 195, getting close to 200. Peace out, everyone. I'm Chase. That is Joel over there. Let's play the outro music, son. Bye-bye.
Bye.